Oh my gosh.
I know.
I leave for Costa Rica on Thursday. Don't do it to me.
It was some irresponsible person that didn't stay in their room on the cruise.
How many days have you been sick?
This is
Oh, are
the
you sick, Max?
third day.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I don't blame you at all, honey. Please.
All right, are we ready to start?
I believe
Good
we are.
evening, everyone. Tonight is a special meeting of the St. Augustine Beach Commission to interview our applicants for the position of city attorney. I welcome you all to be here and look forward to your presentations. And we'll start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we need a roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor England,
Here?
Vice Mayor Costa,
Here.
Commissioner George, here. Commissioner Rumwell,
Here.
and Commissioner Samora.
Here.
Okay. Max, I believe there was a suggested change in the order of interviewing our applicants for city attorney?
Yes, Mr. Sherris regrets that he can't be here quite at 6, so he asks that you proceed, and he'll come in and you could have him last.
Okay,
So the first firm to be interviewed will be the Douglas Law Firm.
all right. And then I want to inform the commissioners that our city attorney is not going to be here tonight. He will be here tomorrow night for our continuation meeting. And the way that has been suggested is that we interview the candidates and then public comment. Interview candidates, ask questions, public comment. Any changes to that? Is that satisfactory? Okay. In that case, I will invite the Douglas Law Firm to come up and tell us about your firm.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are y'all today?
Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Charlie Douglas, One News Place, St. Augustine, Florida, with the Douglas Law Firm, and here with me is another attorney at our firm, Lex Taylor. Would you like me to start in any particular area, or how would you like me to get things going?
If you could start by letting us know what intrigued you or invited you to come and apply, what are you interested in, why St. Augustine Beach?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. The reason that we're here tonight is to apply to serve as your attorney. We have experience with other boards like yourselves, and we believe that we can serve you in a competent and professional manner. We are local. There are 5 attorneys at the firm, and 4 out of the 5 are residents of St. Johns County. We believe in a team approach that you would get the benefit of all of our talents, not just one person. And we are accessible. We're here in the record building at the corner of 312 and 207. We're reachable in that anytime you have a need, you will have all of our cell phone numbers. And if you need something emergently, you are welcome to give us a call at any time, day or night. And also, we are willing, based on your need or request, to come and have office hours here at City Hall, so that if there are any staff members of the city or you as commissioners would have questions of us, that we would be available in person to answer those questions.
Okay. Are there any questions from commissioners? I'll start with you, Commissioner Samora.
You mentioned you're representing several other boards similar to us. Can you give me some examples of other boards or cities or municipalities that you've represented in the past or are currently representing? Yes, sir. So we currently represent the Putnam County School Board. In that capacity, we represent the board as a whole. But some smaller school districts like Putnam County, the board attorney also assists with the district staff, so the superintendent, the department heads. So we are there on a regular basis to answer questions that are all over, from policies and procedures. We help write policies and procedures. They do contract with another organization called Neola, which is known around the state of Florida for helping school boards on policies and procedures. But on some things that come up that they need help on, for example, most recently, a marijuana use policy for employees, we're helpful in drafting that language and getting it implemented. And from HR matters, negotiations with the union, contract review, vendors, the gamut.
You mentioned you've got it's 5 attorneys in the firm.
Yes, sir.
Are any of the attorneys board certified in governmental law?
No, sir.
And have you represented any other municipalities?
No, sir, not in the form of a board attorney. I have served on the Planning and Zoning Board personally for the city of Palatka.
Okay.
I do not currently hold that position.
And I was a senior legislative aide for Hillsborough County.
I will let someone else go ahead and ask a couple questions.
Commissioner Runwell.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for applying. I think Commissioner Samore answered a couple of them that I had. Why St. Augustine Beach? What drew you to St. Augustine Beach?
Well, St. Augustine and St. Johns County is home to us, and when we saw this opportunity present itself, we have a passion for where we live. As a young child, I pretty much grew up in the summertime, at least, down in Crescent Beach on Middleton Avenue, fishing in the Intracoastal Waterway, in the flats behind Devil's Elbow. So I was around St. Augustine Beach growing up pretty much my whole life, although I was a resident of Palatka at that point in time. And just as a little digression on my history, I graduated from Palatka High School and then went to the University of Florida for undergrad for business administration, and then also law school there, and then went to Harrell & Harrell, a law firm, a personal injury law firm in Jacksonville, where I got a lot of experience with litigation. So I handled a case, when I would start a case at that firm, it would be from the filing of the complaint all the way through discovery, litigation, trial, to the very end, and post-judgment collection. So I have a lot of experience in litigation. The evidence rules are something I'm very familiar with and at home with. But although I'm a litigator, I also feel like I'm a mediator. And I always try to resolve solutions or resolve problems with solutions that are agreeable to both sides. So you can say, you know, I come with the honey first and the vinegar later, the litigation at the end. Whereas a lot of attorneys and law firms, they come straight out with litigation. And sometimes that's appropriate, but a lot of times you can save your client a lot of money and time by bringing the parties together and try to reach some type of amicable resolution at the front end.
Have you looked at any of the suits that have been against the city of St. Augustine Beach, or any conflict of interest that you may have with any of the people that have sued the city of St. Augustine Beach?
No, sir, there would be no conflicts of interest. I have kept up to date through what I read in the St. Augustine Record. I have not gone and read the docket on pending litigation matters, but I'm generally aware of things that are going on with the city.
Good, thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Okay. Bear with me. I'm sorry, this is as good as it gets. And I promise I won't tax you very long. So I certainly appreciate your direct tie to the community and having so many people live here and growing up in the area. But you must know that a lot of the other applicants have a lot of experience representing different municipalities. So how would you reconcile that lack of experience, city representation, for us to have a comfortable feeling moving forward?
Good question. And I would answer that by saying We are a team of 5 lawyers. We have a broad spectrum of areas that we focus on. And if we don't know an answer, we certainly have the talent to be able to come and give competent legal advice. But on the vast majority of things that you have issues with, whether it's sunshine law or public records requests or HR issues or bargaining matters, we do a lot of that already. And with the zoning matters, we feel very comfortable and competent to handle real estate and zoning issues. And if there are certain areas that we need to do additional research on, we have a talented group of attorneys that will be able to render sound legal advice for you.
Thank you.
Commissioner George.
Thank you. So you received a statement from our city manager regarding modified terms from what was originally published, in our RFP, kind of like blanket terms, and we came back and kind of weeded out. So just for the record, are those modified terms acceptable to your firm?
Yes, and I believe that there was one question from a prior city commission meeting regarding mileage, and we never intended to charge for mileage in the county. It just would be for out-of-town issues that might come up that we would request the IRS reimbursement for. But otherwise, those terms that you came back with were acceptable to us, and I hope that we have clearly articulated our responses in the latest draft of the RFP.
Okay, and then to be, again, just kind of clear for the record, getting caught up to speed with our city, including, for instance, becoming familiar and comfortable with our charter and our land development code, all of that work, would we be billed extra for that?
No, not at all, no.
Okay. And do you feel like you have any current clients who would have a conflict of interest with you acting in this role?
No.
Okay, and have you ever represented an applicant for development of real estate inside St. Augustine Beach?
No.
Okay, and about how much of your practice overall is dedicated to representing real estate developers in the county, let's say?
Not St. Johns County. I would say less than 5%. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Looks like that's, all the other questions have been answered for me.
Thank you.
Which one of you would be the primary attorney?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Douglas, and you would attend all the commission meetings, and then who would attend planning and zoning?
We can work that out for the commission's desire, however you would like us to proceed with that. But the intent would be for me to be primary on the regularly scheduled commission meetings and the planning and zoning meetings. And then Lex Taylor would be there as well as either a backup or, in my absence, he could serve.
And there's, I think, the code enforcement board sometimes there. And then sometimes our commission meetings flow over, and sometimes we have workshops and special meetings. So I wanted to make sure you have an idea of the workload, which even for a small city, have you been able to ascertain how much of the workload from, talking to the city manager or anyone? Do you know what you're getting into?
Yes, sir. I have watched the commission meetings, and I'm aware that they can go longer into the evening. And although I do have 3 children, Lex has 2 children. Fortunately, we have childcare taken care of, and it would not be a problem for us to go late into the evening.
Okay.
Yep.
And I noticed that your retainer fee that you suggested on your initial application was a little less than what we have suggested our maximum is. So would you consider a minimum per month on retainer based on a certain number of hours, and then if it goes over that, go up to our maximum?
We would consider that.
I think there's maybe an error there, because we resubmitted
Okay.
RFP package and change some of that.
Okay.
Because we heard from the city attorney, the hour commitment and everything else, and that you were looking for some level of confidence of what the fee would be.
Okay, so
And-
you have talked to our city attorney about the workload? Yes, yes or
Yes.
no? You
Yes.
have? Okay, all right.
And also, our understanding that you were not looking to have paralegal time billed. So that's why in the second draft, we added a little bit more to take care of that administrative cost to us, because we know we will be relying on paralegals for some items. But that would not be billed to the commission.
Okay, and paralegals would be primarily for research perhaps, or administrative
More
support?
administrative, yeah.
Okay, administrative, okay, all right, very good. Well, thank you so much. Is anything else you would like to add based on our questions? Okay.
I think of this.
Our city manager, would you like to ask some questions?
Yes, what's the main thrust of your workload? I mean, in terms of the type of practice you have, the kinds of law you practice? Is it-
Yes, sir. We are a general services firm, so we handle everything from real estate, property matters, to estate planning. There's an attorney at our firm who handles criminal defense matters, family law matters, things of that nature.
And how long has your firm existed in St. Augustine?
In St. Augustine, I believe 4 years in St. Augustine. I opened the firm 6 years ago, and I believe the last 4 years we've been in St. Augustine.
And would you have a problem if we had specified in our contract that we had certain performance standards? For example, that anything that comes to me for the city commission, such as ordinances, resolutions, et cetera, has to be to me, in my hands, by a certain time of the month or day of the
Oh,
month?
yes, sir, absolutely. Yeah, that would not be a problem.
Thank you. Those are my questions, Mayor.
Okay. Since our staff does work with city attorney as much or more as the commissioners, I invite any staff member to ask questions. Beverly?
What kind of HR information do you do? I mean, as far as, do you do policies, procedures? Do you do different aspects of HR that you were referring to?
Yes, sir, just about-
We're not unionized here, so, just so you know.
Okay, yes. Anything you can think of with HR, we have touched it with our representation of the school board, policies and procedures. The state of Florida has what's called the Best and Brightest scholarship funds for teachers as a bonus, and how that integrates into the county and the district. Time off issues, discipline, a lot of disciplinary considerations that go into how to handle what different levels or termination hearings.
Injury on the job.
Yeah, injuries on the job, litigation, if something comes up where somebody is suing our client, then how we handle that with risk management and the insurance companies.
Can I ask if you would do ethics or program or a sunshine law classes for some of our new people that we have coming on board?
Yes, absolutely. That's something that we do routinely now. If any new member comes on the school board, we provide that additional training. I have a PowerPoint presentation already we can give to whenever the time is appropriate. But that's definitely one of our strong suits is sunshine law, public records requests. Yeah.
Is that it, Beverly?
Yes.
That was a good question about willing to conduct classes, because that's very important to enhance the professionalism and the competence of our staff.
Right, absolutely.
Chief, any questions?
No, ma'am. Again, a lot of the stuff we, as far as the employee rights stuff and termination, and also too, since we do not have a union, our big thing is, of course, Officer Bill of Rights, because majority of our employees in the police department fall under sworn, police,
Right.
which would be the Officer Bill of Rights. So my only question to you would be, if you're familiar with the Officer Bill of Rights, and have you defended and/or assisted with, I should say, expertise, opinions on the Officer Bill of Rights?
We have never defended anybody in the Officer Bill of Rights. I mean, we do a lot with workers' comp, and so issues and staying up to speed on different legislative changes. For example, a couple of years ago, the legislature decided that PTSD would be covered under workers' comp, or someone who arrives as a first responder on a scene involving the death of a child. Those types of matters would fall under workers' comp, where before in the past it would not have been. So we do stay up to speed on matters that would pertain to employees of the city.
Sure, and I guess it kind of all falls under that big umbrella of the labor law.
Yes.
Which of course is, a lot of our questions are, of course, in officer discipline or employee discipline,
Right.
employee termination and stuff like that, so, thank you.
Very comfortable with that,
Yes.
Thank you. So I was wondering if you have a printed copy of the fee proposal on the resubmission that you mentioned?
I believe we do.
Got one, anyway.
So we can get copies.
I know that I hand-delivered
Yeah.
7 copies, so they should be floating around, but we've got one here.
I didn't receive one, I just double-checked my mailbox, it's not in there, so it'd just be great if I could update my, thank you. Get a copy of this.
Mr. Law, Mr. Law is in charge of our building department.
Okay.
Good evening, thank you for applying.
Good evening.
We are in the process of adopting the new comprehensive plan, and it'll last us another 7 years. With this, it comes many changes we're going to have to make to the current land development regulations. Currently, my staff has been assisting the city attorney in preparing the ordinances. I do not believe I want to continue that. I'm more than happy to provide the codes, but I do believe preparing ordinances is outside of our wheelhouse. So if you are hired, I would expect, and it piggybacks on the city manager, having the information to him on a specific date.
Absolutely. We're comfortable drafting ordinances. We would certainly welcome staff's input. And with other issues coming out on the mid and long-term horizon with resiliency and the effect of rising sea levels and how that's going to affect coastal communities like ours, is something that now is probably a good time to take a look at those items in the comprehensive plan.
Yes, sir, and that is one of our main changes is sea level rise in accordance with state protocol. So we will be adopting all sorts of new ordinances, climate action plans. So, okay.
Just to chime in, I did do some of that when I was at Hillsborough County as a legislative aide. So I'm familiar with those types of plans.
Okay, and Mr. Tredick, our Public Works, do you have any further questions?
One thing that we'll definitely need from our attorneys is, we do a lot of capital projects. Some of them are quite large. Sometimes issues can arise that require action. Maybe it could be something where the contractor's not fulfilling his obligations under the contract. So just a little background on some of your contract law experience and how you would help us in a situation where we're having some trouble getting a contract completed maybe on time, or if there's any issues related to change order, that sort of thing. Where do you see your experience there, and how would you be able to help us there?
Yes, sir. We do a lot of contract law and we do a lot of litigation. So if it comes to the point that litigation is necessary, we can go to that route. But my hope would be that if we start seeing problems on the horizon, that we address it immediately, as soon as possible, and try to work with the contractor in advance on a solution that can be a reasonable one for all parties involved, so that we can avoid litigation. Litigation is a very expensive and time-consuming endeavor. It's very distracting. Yeah. And if that can be avoided, then by all means, that would be our first approach, is to try to work with that contractor. And then on the front end too, if we have the opportunity to be part of that contract drafting, we can help put in language that would identify those potential blocks later down the line and address those on the front end so that there are fewer surprises as we're in the middle or later down the line. Obviously, you cannot predict with 100% certainty what those obstacles may be or become in the future. But if there's something that can be done early on during the drafting stage of those contracts, then we would want to take every opportunity that we can to protect the city as much as possible.
And we do that as a routine when we represent the city.
My other question's more related to state and federal requirements that we have to meet. We have NPDES guidelines and EPA, Clean Water Act, all sorts of things, endangered species of various things. Can you tell us a little bit about your familiarity with those things and how you recommend we avoid pitfalls?
We do have a general familiarity, depending on whatever the specific issue is, would require a deeper dive into different areas of federal rules, regulations, administrative law, and that's something that we do, a lot of research for, to be able to get to those answers and provide the best advice possible to the city.
My commissioner, when I was in Hillsborough County, was the chairman of the Environmental Protection Committee for Hillsborough County. They were very familiar and was able to work with their staff at a high level. So I don't expect to have any problems.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay, I think, Max, have I invited everyone anyone else has any questions? And public comments we'll take after all the interviews.
That's what you want, yes.
Yes, I think we'll do after all the interviews.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, now, would the law firm Lewis, Longman and Walker come up and please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good evening. I'm John Wallace. I'm an attorney with Lewis, Longman and Walker. I split my practice between governmental work, land use and zoning, and environmental issues. It's about, I would say, 60-40 representing those types of clients in actual applications and things of that nature, and then the remainder is litigation. Recent experience with local governments, state governments. Currently I'm representing St. Johns County and Burton Harris litigation that Kings Grant versus St. Johns County, which was actually just dismissed last week after 4 years.
I'm so sorry, but can you say your address for the record?
Oh, excuse me, 245 Riverside Avenue, Suite 510, Jacksonville, Florida. I have also represented the city of Gulfport in federal court, Clean Water Act litigation for violations of NPDES permits. I assist in general counsel representation of the city of Atlantic Beach. I've represented the Florida Department of Transportation and litigation, administrative litigation, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services in litigation over expenditure of Florida Forever funds. And then I also do represent developers, though I don't represent them here in St. Augustine Beach or in St. Johns County due to our continuing representation of St. Johns County.
What intrigued you or what brought you to apply for St. Augustine Beach?
Well, actually, I saw the advertisement was posted in the Jacksonville Bar Association. This is a community that's typical of our general counsel representation. I have pretty strong ties to the community. My father grew up over on Oglethorpe Boulevard, not very far from here. My grandparents were the president, or my grandfather was the president of the Florida School for the Deaf, and Dad was a lifeguard down here in St. Augustine Beach before you were incorporated. So I spent a lot of summers here with my grandparents, and now my dad lives in the house that he grew up in there. So it's kind of a conglomeration of all those things.
So you've heard a little bit about the type of work, the amount of work that might be involved with representing the city of St. Augustine Beach. So about how many hours do you work a week now, and how would you take on some of the issues that we have here in St. Augustine Beach?
On any given week, I am in the office 50 to 60 hours. Taking on additional clients, I would simply take less work from other offices. I frequently perform work on clients that are out of Tallahassee, out of our West Palm office, out of Tampa office, so I can make room that way. I was here for the previous meeting, so I did hear that it's 40 to 50 hours is the approximate monthly workload. I'm familiar with local governments because I am involved with Atlantic Beach pretty significantly, so I don't think that will be an issue.
And coming to our 6 o'clock and sometimes 5 o'clock meetings, coming from Jacksonville, Riverside, 95, how would you ensure that you could always be here?
Well, actually, we currently represent Anastasia Mosquito Control District as well, so I'm pretty familiar with the traffic. I just leave early, and if I get here early, I do other work.
Okay, all right. Commissioners, start at this end again, any further questions?
Yes, you said you represent the Anastasia Mosquito Control District?
Yes.
Is that you personally or someone in the firm?
Wayne Flowers is the direct contact, however, we kind of treat it like a team effort. I cover the meetings pretty frequently. I handle a lot of the contractual issues that they have come across with the building of their new facilities that has gone on over the last three years or so.
And what would be your intention on covering the commission meetings, planning and zoning meetings, code enforcement? Who would be the primary and who would be secondary?
I would be
covering those meetings?
primary. Wayne Flowers would be likely secondary, and Brenna Durden would fill in as well if they're required. I don't anticipate that occurring very often.
And how many of the meetings do you think you would be attending personally?
My goal would be to attend all of them if that is what the commission desired.
Thank you for coming and applying, appreciate it. Kind of the same questions before, board certification, you or other people in the firm that would be working on it?
Wayne is dual board certified in state, local government, and administrative law. I'm planning on sitting for the exam this coming cycle. And then throughout our offices, we have, I believe, between 7 and 10 other attorneys that are board certified in either local government or administrative law, which would cover a lot of the land use issues.
Any other municipalities up here? I know you said St. Johns County, you do stuff, you help them out. Atlantic Beach, anybody else that you all have done?
We have in the past done work for Neptune Beach. We have done work for Green Cove Springs. We have assisted with the city of Jacksonville on outside council type matters. And then aside from that, in terms of special districts, which are governed by some of the same statutes in terms of the Sunshine Law, we represent the Ponte Vedra Municipal Services District, Miller Creek Special District, Harbor Waterways Special District, Sunshine 811, or excuse me, yeah, it is Sunshine 811. It's the Call Before You Dig. That is a quasi-governmental entity, so we represent them. And there's, a number of others, too many to list. There should have been a listing of all of our current clients in my packet.
And then the other question, no conflict of interest or anything like that with anything in St. Augustine Beach?
No, we've never, to my knowledge, in my time at Lewis Longman Walker, we've never represented anybody before the commission. The only kind of repeat developer client I represent is Vescor, which is a affordable housing developer, and St. Augustine Beach is really not their market.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor, anything?
No, not at this time.
Commissioner George?
Just going over my list, bear with me, please. Would you also be willing to conduct classes for the boards, for instance, sunshine law training, ethics training for the planning board and the city commission, as well as any of the other staff needs?
Yes, I would, and I already routinely do those classes for a lot of our other boards, so that's not a problem.
Okay, and were the modified terms that were circulated acceptable to your firm?
They were not, and I indicated that in a response to Ms. Radatz, and was subsequently invited to attend.
Okay, so to be clear then, would everything be done only at an hourly rate? Is that
No,
what you're proposing?
No, what I was proposing is that we could come to an agreement in terms of a flat fee up to a certain number of hours or a certain subset of services, and then items falling out of that would be performed at an hourly rate.
Okay. So you're not proposing any particular amount then, in regard to that structure that you're considering as a hypothetical? Are you prepared to make any kind of a specific proposal to compete against what has been accepted by the other applicants that are being interviewed tonight?
We would stand on the original proposal, which was, if I had to make an offer, it would be the original proposal, which is 30 hours at $6,000, and then additional hours would be $225 after that. services such as bond counsel, which you called for, would be at the price we quoted for bond counsel, which is a highly technical area that very few people actually have experience with. And then litigation would be at $250 an hour, I believe is what we quoted. And if there were, if someone wanted to negotiate on some of those terms, we may be willing to consider some type of reduction, but we are not willing to do a flat fee for unlimited services. It's just too risky for our business model and not something that works for us.
Great, thank you.
City Manager, Mr. Royal?
So just to clarify, the fee structure that you submitted on our page 16 is what has been submitted? Is that?
I was looking at Exhibit 3. Oh, yes. this one.
I have a question to the mayor.
Okay, while we're searching.
Yep. So if there was something, I see because you have different hourly rates, obviously for junior associates and stuff like that, if it were something that a junior associate could do to get you to that 40 hours, would you be willing to do that for that price of the 6,000? So meaning somebody that charges less hourly than you do to get to the extra 10 hours to get the complete 40 in, would that work?
That would work, yes.
You can make 40 hours work at the price pending.
40 hours at $6,000 is $150 an hour. I don't know how you get there to, if your question is, can we do a blended rate of a junior associate plus my time to get to $6,000, I don't know that it would depend on how much work that associate would be doing. And I don't know that that's realistic, given that it seems to me, having reviewed meeting minutes, that you all do frequently go over in terms of having a second meeting each month, or second commission meeting like tomorrow night. I don't know that you all would be, number one, we don't have a junior associate in Jacksonville that I could use. I would be using other offices, so that would not really work if a lot of the time is spent in these meetings. Now, if it was other items, it may be more feasible.
Thank you.
Commissioner George, did you have further questions? Okay.
No, that's all I need to know.
Next, Mr. Royal.
What kind of work do you do for Neptune Beach and Green Cove?
Green Cove, we worked on their, basically consolidating, bringing unincorporated portions of Clay County into Green Cove Springs. Neptune Beach, we have handled zoning issues for them in terms of litigation, that sort of thing. We're not currently representing Neptune Beach. We're currently, I say currently, we have been engaged very recently doing annexation for Green Cove Springs.
That was my question, Mayor.
All right, staff have any questions? Ms. Raddis?
No, it would be the same questions, and I think that Commissioner George already went over that with the ethics
Okay.
and so forth, and
Yes, ma'am.
Chief?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Wallace, the same question again as with the Douglas Law Firm was, particularly law enforcement experience. I know we're kind of a unique beast, nothing to do with the criminal cases at all, just something to do with Officer Bill of Rights, of course, our labor law and our FMLA type of issues.
I am not familiar with the Officer Bill of Rights. We have an attorney in our Tallahassee office named Glenn Smith, who's actually a former law enforcement officer and handles labor issues, represents police officers, and so I'm sure he is, and that would be, so he would be my first source to go to in terms of those type of issues.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
And Building Department?
My questions would be the same for the applicant, is would the law firm be able to generate the ordinances and resolutions to be submitted to the city manager?
Sure, that's something we do routinely. We just went through a comprehensive plan rewrite with the city of Atlantic Beach.
And also, when my department reaches out for assistance from a legal perspective, I don't feel comfortable unless I have the answers in writing, and that could be via email or a memo.
No issues at all. We wouldn't tell you anything we wouldn't put in writing.
Okay, thank you. And that would be the same question for the rest of the applicants.
And Public Works.
Thank you. A couple questions I wish I'd asked also on the first one. We need a lot of interlocal agreements, interagency agreements. I imagine you have some experience with that. You've said you worked for the Mosquito Control District. If we needed to do an interlocal agreement, would there be any issues with that, with them?
I mean, I guess there could be, you would probably need to waive conflicts on each side. I don't really think, we have handled that type of thing between various special districts and things of that nature that we've represented. A prime example being Harbor Waterways Special District recently acquired a dredge spoil site, and we've been working on an agreement between them and another client in terms of the deposit of that soil. So I don't really think that presents really a significant conflict.
And the other.
Okay, I'm sorry, but can you talk in the microphone?
Yes,
You can
ma'am.
turn around if you want, or go around the other opposite side, but
I'll get closer. Sorry.
they're not hearing you on there.
And the other question I had is related to defensive ordinances and things that we pass. We're looking at doing a non-ad valorem assessment right now. Down the road, hopefully we'll look at other options, something maybe a stormwater utility fee, something like that. Do you have any experience with those and defending those if they're challenged?
I have never personally defended a stormwater fee. I've been involved in litigation over stormwater fees, and the Gulfport litigation was a situation where the stormwater fees were not covering the cost of maintenance of the aging infrastructure, and so the ultimate outcome was working to go to the state revolving loan program for stormwater, wastewater loans. But as a firm, I'm certain there's someone who has directly defended one of those ordinances.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Here, one more for me. If we had to use outside counsel, or you had to use outside counsel for a special project for us, his or her fee would not be separate from what we're paying you, right?
If there was a situation where we couldn't handle something for you all, it would be a separate fee.
Like you mentioned the stormwater, you were not that familiar with it.
When you say outside counsel, are you saying someone within our firm, just not me, or are you saying another law firm?
Another law firm, somebody outside your law firm.
That would have to be handled separately through an agreement with them. I don't anticipate that you all are going to have anything that we can't handle. We have 35 attorneys in Florida. We're a local government firm. We handle local government issues for hundreds of local governments all over the state. We represent state agencies routinely. So I don't think that you're going to run into many issues that we can't handle.
My question, Mayor?
Okay. Thank you so much for applying, and I appreciate your sharing that information with us.
Thank you.
So much. Okay, our next law firm is Paul Eklund, Brantz, and Kelton.
They're in the corridor, they're coming in.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Darren Elkine. It's a pleasure to be before you this evening. My address for the record is 142 East New York Avenue in DeLand. Before I start with my comments, I just want to mention the reason we stepped out of the room is just it's old-fashioned respect for our brothers at the day, as it's a little stressful to sit here and do this. And that's just how we do it. So didn't want you to think we were disinterested. We were just doing it for that reason. And I want to thank you. I'm here with Lonnie Group this evening. He'll be talking to you in just a moment as well. And we both want to thank you for the opportunity to be considered for this position. A very brief background on me. I'm board certified by the Florida Bar in City, County, and Local Government Law. I'm also board certified by the Florida Bar in Civil Trial Law. So I have a unique skill set in terms of representing government in government disputes the governments get themselves into, and also litigating for private property owners against government. It's really not in St. Johns County, though. I have for more than I care to remember, been the city attorney for the city of DeLand. It consumes a fair amount of my time. I continue to be the city attorney in the city of DeLand. I'd invite any of you to contact anyone there and talk to them about my skill set. I would tell you that one of the things I pride myself on as a city attorney, or two of the things, is being responsive and available to my clients. That includes, department heads have my cell phone number. If they need to call me on the night or the weekend, I don't let them make a habit out of it, but if they need to, they know they can, and they know they'll get an answer. I also pride myself on giving advice, which is as clear and concise as it can be. So when I give advice, my clients or the department head, whomever it may be, knows what I said, and even if I'm wrong, they know what I said, and they can proceed accordingly. I'd like to explain briefly why we bid on the opportunity to serve as the city attorney for the city of St. Augustine Beach. Before we saw the advertisement for this RFP, Lonnie Groot, who's been a friend of mine for many, many years and a mentor in some form or fashion, decided to join our firm on an of-council basis. And part of that is to help with the work at the city of DeLand and some of the private clients we have in Volusia County that are routinely involved in dealing with government. And when we saw the RFP for the city of St. Augustine Beach, it was sort of like a light bulb. We both knew it's right size. I mean, it's the volume of work that I imagine you have and what you need is a perfect fit. For us, the idea of representing a coastal community that is on the beachfront is really exciting. Mr. Groot's going to tell you in particular why he is particularly excited about his situation working for the city, because Lonnie would be the lead. He'd be the fellow that shows up for your city commission meetings. He's more qualified than I am to represent local government, by the way, but he'll tell you about that himself. And so he'll share that with you. I would tell you, and I felt compelled to point out to you that we submitted the initial RFP, and we proposed a rate of $175 per hour, which is the same rate that we charged the city of DeLand. And we have other governmental clients that we charge a higher rate to, but that's the rate we charge the city of DeLand for routine, just month after month. And although we agreed to the revised request for an amended response, it really wasn't much of an amendment other than to say we would bill that same $175 an hour rate that we originally proposed, but that we would do a sort of a flat fee situation up to a certain number of hours per month. So I just felt it important to say, you didn't have to ask us to reduce our price. This is what we thought was fair, and that's what we proposed. So it would be a privilege to have that work if I could. I know much more important than anything I or Lonnie have to say is what questions you have for us, but if Lonnie could just address you for a moment.
Well, that's exactly my point too, because the most important thing is your questions. You probably read about us, we can say all sorts of things about ourselves, but the most important thing is our questions. My address is 3047 South Atlantic Avenue, Daytona Beach Shores, Florida. So one reason I'm excited about this opportunity is because I come out of our parking garage, I take a right, and an hour and 15 minutes later, I'm here. It's that simple. And I'll take a left, and in an hour and 15 minutes, I'll be back in Daytona Beach Shores, which is where I'm doing most all my work, okay? Since 1985, I've been doing local government law. I served 6 years in the Army JAG Corps. I served at Fort Bragg, Berlin, Germany, and Redstone Arsenal, Alabama. And before that, I worked for the Montana legislature and for the Florida legislature. Since 1985, I've represented, I think, like 13 cities, 2 counties. Right now, I represent the River to Sea TPO, which isn't much work really, but it's fun to do. I've represented supervisor of elections, Seminole State College a couple of times when Dr. McGee called me to represent her college on an emergency basis for several months. And I was general counsel for the Seminole County Expressway Authority from basically its commencement
till it turned over all of its activities to the Orlando Orange County Expressway Authority. And, well, you've seen, you know, I like to teach too. I've taught for 5 colleges, so, but I'm not teaching right now, although I'm suffering from withdrawal from the students, so, anyway. But that's me, and I'm really excited about your town. Like Darren said, coastal communities, I think, are really neat places to represent, neat place to live. I live in one. So what questions might you have of Darren and I? Oh, I'm also board certified, but that's in the documents too, in city, county law.
Commissioner Samora.
You've represented many municipalities in the past. Are you currently representing any or serving as a city attorney for any?
I'm not serving as city attorney, okay? Like Darren said, starting February 1, I'll be of council working on the land matters, okay? And there's a reason for the February 1 date. I'm also of council for Stenser-McIntosh, and I do work for the city of Sanford and for the city of Webster. And like I said, I do most of that, you know, writing ordinances, writing legal opinions, taking phone calls. And it's very much similar to Darren, except I do encourage weekend calls, and I do talk to people throughout the weekend and the evenings. You know, I take a lot of phone calls, do hundreds and hundreds of emails every week, and do a lot of writing every week. For Sanford, I attend the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings, which is once a month, and the Historic Preservation Board meeting, which is once a month. And I substitute for Bill Colbert rarely for city commission meetings. I have been going to the city of Oviedo, and I, by choice, after quite frankly, a couple of my people I'd worked with for many years as mayor and a council member, decided not to run, and I decided not to serve as city attorney there anymore. Not city attorney, assistant city attorney. So I have not doing work for the city of Oviedo right now. We have transitioned that to another lawyer in the firm by my choice.
And you mentioned you like coastal communities, you live in a coastal community. We're in one, and we have unique challenges. Have you ever done any work for other coastal communities?
Daytona Beach Shores.
You have?
I have for Daytona.
And what type of work did you do for Daytona Beach Shores?
Well, for all the cities and counties, as you know, when you work for a local government, you are a general practitioner, expected to know a little bit about everything, from, you know, eminent domain real estate, contract law, personnel law, and everything. So, quite frank, and a little bit of police, the Police Officer Bill of Rights, which is, you know, basically a procedural mechanism to protect police officers in disciplinary matters. So, you know, you have to be very careful to adhere to all of its requirements. But quite frankly, in Daytona Beach Shores, there wasn't that much dealing with the coastal issues because Volusia County Charter, well, there was a lot actually for a while, because there was a dispute between the city and the county, because the county was buying parcels along the beach side and saying we're going to make parking lots out of them. And we don't need your zoning approvals, we don't need any of your approvals, city. We ended up in litigation and Chapter 164 mediation on that issue. But where I'm going with that is there's not a whole lot of regulation that Daytona Beach Shores or any coastal city can do in Volusia County, because the county charter gives preemptive authority, basically sole authority, to the county over everything on the beach. And the county has sort of expanded that concept of the beach to include on-ramps, buildings on on-ramps, and actually refused to limit their expanse even inland. So if something related to the beach and it was several blocks inland, they would still have jurisdiction. So Daytona Beach Shores and Volusia County coastal cities are a little unique because of that county charter provision.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank you for coming and applying. Why St. Johns County? Why St. Augustine? Besides being a coastal community, St. Augustine Beach being a coastal community.
Sure, absolutely.
and Lonnie and I would tell you the same thing, but that was a unique one, and I had that written down but didn't share it with you. It's far enough away that we're not going to have any conflicts. We're not going to have to miss a meeting or find someone to cover a meeting because we represented a landowner or a developer, which is something that I do a lot of. But it's close enough, as Lonnie said, he leaves the parking garage in his condominium building and makes a right turn and ends up here an hour and 15 minutes later, and when I come, it's a very pleasant ride.
Beautiful drive.
So it's close enough that it makes financial sense for us to do it. We certainly wouldn't bid on a city in Duval County or not even Orange County, although it's closer, there's too much traffic. So it's close enough, and yet it's far enough away that it doesn't create a problem. I've been asked on various occasions to become or to apply to become the city attorney in other cities in Volusia County. I've said, no, I simply can't do more than one in Volusia County. So this is just the perfect fit for us, and that's why. Sorry, I just wanted to share that.
Now, you said you're of counsel, so how long have you been of counsel of the law firm?
At Spencer McIntosh, or since about 2000. I worked at Schutz and Bowen 2000 through the presidential litigation for a couple of years. So I worked for 2 years at Schutz and Bowen after I left Seminole County. I'd been 15 years at Seminole County after coming out of the Army. And then went to Spencer McIntosh about 2002, but went to Palm Coast in-house for a year and a half maybe, and then we moved to Tallahassee, and we had to take care of an ailing father, and I worked, luckily got a job working with a law firm that represented Gadsden County while we were in Tallahassee. And then we came back to Spencer McIntosh. Okay. So over the past 18 years, I would say 14 of them have been with Spencer McIntosh, something like that.
And I had one thing to that.
Absolutely.
Mr. Rumra.
Yes.
I think also you were asking about with our firm.
Correct.
And the reason I'm here, my firm, and we've been digressing for just a moment, we've been practicing law in Volusia County for 25 years. One of my longtime partners just went of counsel, well established in the community. So we are sort of a fixture in the Volusia County and the West Volusia County area. Before, and I hope I mentioned this earlier, before we saw your RFP, I was talking with Lonnie about coming on an arrangement in which he could come on, and we had reached agreement on how that would work and how much work he would be doing for the city of DeLand, what we would guarantee. And the effective date of that is February 1 of 2020. But for Lonnie having been coming on in that arrangement anyways, in our contractual relationship that was in place that starts February 1, we wouldn't have bid on St. Augustine Beach.
Okay.
It was just the perfect fit, perfect time.
Answer my question. Thank you.
So if I understand the nature of coming on board of counsel, would you keep your current clients, or are you changing clients? I am concerned about the time constraints. For a small community, we are active and with regard to our needs for legal advice and just being here for the number of meetings. So I think you've heard that sometimes, monthly is 40 hours a week. And, with your travel and planning and zoning, workshops, commission meetings, code enforcement and other issues, and of course there are rising issues all the time for us, challenges. Tell us more about how you feel you can meet those commitments.
Well, the only meetings that I have firmly established right now is the Sanford Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, which is, I think, the third Thursday of the month in the morning, and Historic Preservation Board, which does conflict with Code Enforcement Board, but we've already talked about that. We'll have an attorney come to Code Enforcement. All my evenings are free. I have no problems on any evenings. I have no commitments to any other city at any evenings.
Okay.
So I'm totally available, and when it comes to evening meetings, Planning and Zoning Commission here, that's fine, that's an evening meeting. There's no issues.
Okay.
And in terms of the workload, we've discussed that carefully. That's not a problem either.
Okay, all right. Vice Mayor.
Sure, yes. So have either of you or your firm done any work in St. Johns County?
I don't think I've ever done any work in St. Johns.
I'd love to tell you I could remember all the work that I've done in 25 years, but I'm very confident that I have not worked in St. Johns County in the last decade. Prior to that, it's a little cloudy. So.
Okay. And along that same line of question, what would you consider the challenges and/or advantages of not having experience within St. Johns County?
Oh, I've got an answer. You want to go first?
Please.
My answer, I think, having experience in this regard, I think it's very helpful for, and y'all know this better than anybody as commissioners, because your day is never over. You go to the grocery store, your constituents are there. You go to the ball game and want to devote the time to watch your friend or child or whatever play, your constituents are there, and they expect you to give them 100% of attention and all that. I think it's good for a city attorney to be away from that and to be a total, absolute straight shooter, to be not affected by the local politics, not affected by the locals goings on, to be focused on the needs of the local governing body, the needs of staff. It's just that simple. And I think by being not from the community, it makes it easier. It's never easy, but it makes it easier. Yeah?
No, same thing. I don't want to take up your time. I would have said the same thing.
Okay, and I have a tendency to ask the questions that, like, is in the back of people's minds that other people wouldn't normally ask. So one of the most common phrases that we hear when we talk about development within our own city is that our community does not want to be another Daytona Beach. And you're from Daytona Beach in Volusia County, so how would you reconcile that?
Well, Daytona Beach Shores doesn't want to be Daytona Beach either, I can tell you that. The important thing is planning, in my judgment. When I got out of the Army and moved to Seminole County, 1985, Seminole County was a totally different place than it is today, okay? And I teach courses on quasi-judicial proceedings and planning and all that. But what Seminole County did in 1977, prior to the state legislature saying, you shall plan counties and cities, they went to the legislature and asked for a special planning act for Seminole County. They said, make us plan. And they divided the city into the county into 4 quadrants and had planning committees for each quadrant. Developed a comprehensive plan, which was one of the first in the state. And you know what? Seminole County, by and large, looks exactly like it was planned. You go down the I-4 corridor and you see Heathrow and you see all that intense development. That was the plan. That was the goal. You go out towards the Econ on the east, it's rural. That was the plan. That was the goal. You go to the west, Wekiva River. Well, there was, quite frankly, there were some concessions made there to work out some litigation. But by and large, there's still the Wekiva River Protection Area, influenced by an expressway now, I have to admit. But the key is planning. The key is planning.
Can I add some? I hope you all don't mind us both doing this. We're lawyers. If you want to be Daytona Beach Shores, or you want to be the smallest city with the largest lots somewhere USA, that's your prerogative. The people elected you, you make those decisions. We don't make those decisions. Here's what we're going to do. I don't know if it's true here, but in every other place I've practiced, developers and landowners will come in, you have to allow me to do this. If you don't allow me to do this, I'm going to sue you. We're going to make sure that you have a darn good record for whatever decision you make, but it's your decision. So we don't care if you want to be Daytona Beach or you want to be the city of Lake Helen. That's a very sparsely populated city that doesn't want any development in Volusia County. That's up to you. It's our job to make sure you get there through the right process. It's a defensible process, and no matter what you choose to do, big or small, it's supportable, it's defensible, and it will stand judicial muster.
It's your vision. It's your vision. We just try to help you implement it. That's all.
Mr. Elkine, thank you for saying that. If I may, Mr. Groot, since you have served on so many boards, I would like to ask you about your style as advising that board with regard to the law, findings of fact, giving them keeping them focused. Do you usually kind of sit back and let the board, or do you actively keep them focused?
Well, first thing I try to do is help in training, okay? We're doing a 2.5-hour session in a few weeks for the Sanford Planning and Zoning Commission. And I'm teaching them quasi-judicial procedures and taking them from, hopefully, a whole perspective on land use law in the 2.5 hours, and hopefully not too many people will fall asleep. But I try to stay active. There's a statute now, 166.033, and there's a similar statute in the county chapter 125 that says when you deny a development order or development permit, you have to state the reasons for it. And you have to cite the rule, policy, or whatever that supports that denial, okay? I've always recommended, and as much as I could, insist that advisory boards like planning and zoning commissions give reasons for their recommendations, okay? That was before the statute required it. Because what I tell them is, if you just have a 4-3 vote to deny or approve, and it comes to the city commission, city council, and they say, why? You say, I don't know. That's not very helpful. So articulate, give them minutes, give them a motion that says why the denial is being recommended, or why, or actually in Sanford now, what the city commission has demanded, and I always remind the Planning and Zoning Commission to do, is if anybody votes in the negative, they want to know why. And it has to be spread on the minutes. So that when it gets to y'all, the city commission in Sanford, you say, oh, that's what they're thinking. Because it's inappropriate for them to come up before you, when you're making the decision, and start arguing the case. That's not their job. So I'm very active, actually. I don't know how, Darren, I've substituted for you several times, and I've seen you active.
And it may have been you that shared this with me when I was a younger lawyer, is there's a point when a collegial body is getting too far afield, and you have to be active. There is a difference between keeping a board focused and injecting yourself in the decision-making process, and that's an important distinction that we're both acutely aware of. Try not to embarrass people either, but I
don't know if you've ever been, I've been asked twice in my career, both at I think the same city council. Well, Lonnie, how would you vote? And I just say, first of all, it doesn't matter. Second of all, you don't want to know. And quite frankly, I have defended, I can tell you now, there's a case that we went all the way to the governor and cabinet and to the appellate courts in the Wekiva River Protection Act issue. And we won. I would have voted against it. If I had been on the county commission at the time, I'd have voted against it. I defended their decision zealously. I came up with theories as to how to defend it, some of which made my wife very mad, but that's your job. But it's, like Darren said, as long as it's not illegal, immoral, or unethical, our job is to help you make a decision based upon all the facts that are available, all the professional guidance that's appropriate, and then defend that decision.
Did you have any more questions, Vice Mayor?
No.
How about you, Commissioner?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm really glad you asked those questions, by the way, because that's an ongoing concern, and that's really good to hear about. You really seem to love the government law. So
why we're here.
that enthusiasm definitely comes through. One of the, kind of goals I imagine for the whole commission is that we have somebody who's a firm that's willing to join us and then stay with us. So and it seems like you have that kind of regular, consistent background that would be easy to meet. But I do want to ask Lonnie, or Mr. Groot. Okay, the hour and 15-minute drive, so sometimes we don't get out of here until about after 10. So you may not get home until about midnight. Is that a concern?
Okay, you know, I'm laughing too, because, first of all, I represent Lake Helen for a good while, and it's a little old tiny town. Maybe, I call it, I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Huh?
It's okay.
It's Mayberry, except half the people hate the other half. I mean, that's it. But their meetings, little tiny Lake Helen, never ended till after midnight. I mean, that was just the way it was. When I was in Seminole County, we went to 4 in the morning, back-to-back nights, planning and zoning, during the comp plan heydays. And the following week, we went to 4 in the morning, county commission, back-to-back nights. Those aren't the longest. I started at Volusia County Council at 6 one night and got home at 7 in the morning, because they went all night long. That doesn't faze me.
I think we can promise you that won't be an issue here.
Beyond that, when he gets home from the meeting, he'll probably respond to one of the emails I sent him earlier, so it's not.
Okay, I also really like that you have the background of representing counties and being a county attorney. Of course, on the resume here, it references being the assistant county attorney for Seminole County, but then it says deputy county. What is the position of the deputy county attorney that you are holding?
That's it. It's just the number 2 person.
Number 2. So it's not like the main, but it's
Oh,
directly
no.
under
There is the county attorney and there is the deputy. When I first got to Seminole, there was a county attorney and a deputy, and that's all there was. Then I became the 3rd person. And then, over time, the county attorney left, the deputy went to county attorney, and I became deputy.
Okay, that's great. I was just, wanted to make sure I understood that properly. And I believe you already said you're willing to conduct classes. You're doing that currently. Okay, I think all my questions got answered. Thank you so much.
Mr. Groot, you have heard the questions from our staff, and so can you just briefly address some of those questions that were coming from the staff?
What I heard was, from the chief, was basically police officer bill of rights, some disciplinary issues.
Sir, if you could speak into the microphone,
Sure.
please.
Some disciplinary issues, and that's basically what you asked about, right? And that's pretty normal. I actually do go beyond that with some cities, but it's up to what the police chief wants in terms of.
Mayor, if I can, the only thing I'd like to ask is, since we have quite a few, reserve members in our agency, and within the city employees now, is your experience through the U.S. military with USERRA and ESGR? Do you have some experience in that through your JAG experience?
No.
Okay.
You're talking about the.
Basically employment rights, re-employment rights.
I have not had any issue with reemployment of a vet since, ever, actually. I've heard of issues where some departments have, not taken people back and it's caused issues, but every department that I've ever dealt with has not ever been an issue.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. And our building department and our public works?
About ordinances being drafted, there you go.
Right, ordinances.
Sure. I don't want to sound like a braggart at all, okay? But if I can hardly think of an ordinance issue that I haven't addressed.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I heard one question about special assessment districts. I've done water, sewer, roads, landscaping, walls, lake maintenance, maybe something else, but there's, stormwater and yeah. So, street lighting. Albedo just did street lighting about a year ago. We did street lighting citywide, so.
Can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
I may not have been listening out there as intently as I should have, but I believe one of the questions, I think it was from the building official, or I think it was from the building official, wanting answers in writing. I wouldn't want to give, and I know I can speak for both of us, we wouldn't want to give a building official an answer to a question that wasn't in writing. It doesn't mean we're going to do a formal memo and, spend 2 hours drafting a memo. It may be an email, it may be an email from a phone, depending on if it's, how pressing the issue is. But one, we want to make sure when they're out in the field and something comes up, they're clear on what we told them. Not here, but in some cases, we want to make sure it's in writing, so there's no question about what we told them. But that's important, I think, not just for building officials, but for other department heads. They want a clear record of what we told them, and, right, wrong, or indifferently, we said it, it was our advice, and the buck stops here if there's an issue with what that advice was.
Repeat the question and give the answer in writing. Yes, I was trained that way too. Any further questions for Mr. Groot from the back of the room here?
Not for me.
Not for me either, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, I have one. Mr. Groot, did you say you work for the land now?
I have substituted for Darren on 10 times over the years. I've taken more than that. See, when Darren's had issues with there's been problems with him sitting at the city commission, I have substituted at the city of DeLand and on planning, zoning, and city commission, right? And one time the special magistrate.
I noticed that Darren is now the city attorney for DeLand, but DeLand meets the first and third Monday of the month. So we meet the first Monday of the month.
I'm the city attorney for the city of DeLand and have been for many years. One of the major reasons that Lonnie has joined our firm of counsel, obviously, they love Lonnie and DeLand as well, has been to help with the workload there. They're a small city too, but they're approaching a $100 million annual budget, and it's just with all the different funds. So the workload is such that, we can support that. So I cover those meetings, and I don't miss those meetings. One of the reasons I've never been in Volusia County anyways, and probably wouldn't. But I can't miss, we wouldn't be doing this, as I said before, but for Lonnie being here, because he's going to be primary, he's going to be the one coming to the city commission meeting. We've got somebody else that do code enforcement board meetings. I think in terms of some of the ordinance drafting, question answering, I envision I'll be involved in a fair amount of that as well. But the city commission meetings, that's...
I have another question. Now, in case Mr. Groot can't make our meeting because he's ill or goes on vacation, who from your agency would be the attorney in his place here?
A city commission meeting?
Yes, because you couldn't be since you're going to be in DeLand.
Yes, we would take another attorney from the office. It'd probably be a fellow by the name of Matthew Brands. I would encourage you to ask Lonnie how many meetings he's been sick or on vacation for, because as municipal lawyers, I can't speak for you, but much of the chagrin of I've been married a long time, and when we schedule a vacation in my home, or my wife is scheduling something, she sometimes emails one of my secretaries to find out, she knows when the commission meetings are, but she'll check, are there any other meetings? So that's part of loving doing municipal work, is you plan around the commission schedule, and you make sure that if you're going to be on vacation when something important is going on, that you set aside time to address it.
I can't think. The only meetings I've missed when I was assigned to a city, the only ones I've been planned vacations. That I don't think I've ever just missed a meeting.
That was my question.
May I ask a follow-up? How many attorneys in your firm?
There are, I had to think about it for a second. We have six full-time attorneys, 2 that are of counsel. One of the 2 of counsel is my longtime law partner, very accomplished fellow who is slowing down and gone of counsel. And I've taken over his management responsibilities for the firm.
Are the 2 of you the only board certified in government?
Yes, Mr.
Okay. And Mr. Brantz, does he have a background in government law?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
He does do the code enforcement for the city of DeLand. He's a special magistrate for another city. I would not anticipate him ever having to come to a meeting. I mean, if it were really something that was problematic, I from time to time would probably have him or somebody cover the City of DeLand meeting and me show up here, just because of that long-term relationship, it would be okay. If we thought that Lonnie wasn't going to be able to come to a meeting now, we probably wouldn't be bidding on this. I mean, it's not how we operate.
Okay, all right.
That's all the questions.
I think that's it for right now, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good conversation. All right. I'd like to invite Mr. Ralph Brooks to come up, and thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Ralph Brooks, attorney, and I'm delighted to be here. This is something that I enjoy doing in my life. I kind of adopt local governments, and I go there and I help them when they need help. I can tell you that I come from a citizen's background. I come from a public interest background. I don't come from a developer background, although after I graduated from law school, I represented developers for 3 years, and I couldn't sleep at night. I woke up wondering what I was doing, especially when I went to a meeting and they were putting high-rise hotels in the mangroves in North Miami Beach, and everyone said, "Why are you doing this?" And I asked myself that evening, why am I doing this? And I turned in my resignation the next day. Since then, I've been representing local governments that care. I went to law school at University of Florida on an environmental law fellowship with a law school, what they call perhaps a think tank there, called the Center for Governmental Responsibility. And I take government responsibility and the ability to govern and govern for the future very much importance in my life. I've served as a practitioner in residence at University of Florida Law School in Gainesville just a couple years ago, where I was traveling there 2-3 times a month and helping students on projects. I work with their conservation clinic on an ongoing basis. I served as assistant Sarasota County attorney in the Sarasota County Attorney's Office under 3 different county attorneys. So I learned 3 different styles there and represented many of the different departments and staff. I went to the Florida Keys for nearly 10 years, where I was an assistant county attorney and land use and litigation counsel for Monroe County, which is the Florida Key Islands that are not incorporated. While I was there, I was proactive. I'd work with the zoning staff in reviewing applications from the day they came in, through the Planning Commission, through the Board of County Commissioners, through State Circuit Court, through federal court, and defended them every step of the way. And this was a county commission that was denying a lot of projects. And we had written a rate of growth ordinance controlling growth in the Florida Keys, and it still stands today. And it's an example of success in growth management. The Florida Keys is the area of critical state concern, so they have principles guiding development, which we had to implement. I helped implement the sewer system there to take the Florida Keys off of septic, which is still going on today, but has had a great deal of success. I've worked in this area a bit. I represented the city of St. Augustine in a case dealing with the historic lighthouse and renovations that were going to occur there. I also represented the tiny city of Marineland in putting together their comp plan and writing their land development code to implement their comp plan in Marineland. I had the pleasure of working with John Hankinson, who's no longer with us, but some of you may know him from the Water Management District. And Henry Dean was involved. He's on the St. Johns County Commission now. I'm currently town attorney for a town on an as-needed basis. It's only 700 people there, 1/10 of the amount of people that you have. And they don't have an attorney that goes to every meeting. They have an attorney that comes when they need them. The town of Yankeetown. I was asked to come up there to be their town when they had a change in the city commission. Some of the commissioners were removed by the governor. The group called Save Yankeetown, their candidates became the town council. We defended 9 development cases against large hotels on the Withlacoochee River. When I first looked at Yankeetown on Google Earth, you can't see it because it's covered by tree canopy. The development applications would have doubled the size of that town. They were turned down. We won. We defended them in state court and federal court, and we rewrote their comprehensive plan again, rewrote their land development code, and we received an award from the Department of Community Affairs for the best comprehensive plan by a city that year. And they were there to help us defend the plan. Later, we received a grant. We applied for and got a grant from the state, DEO, to do an adaptation action area plan, and we incorporated it into our comprehensive plan. The unique thing about that, it was not only dealing with sea level rise, but we had a science plan and we had a business plan. And those two science and business plans were integrated with our adaptation to sea level rise, and we also won awards for that. I currently work on a pro bono basis, sort of, with the Captiva Community Planning Panel. Captiva is an unincorporated island in Lee County, unlike Sanibel, although it's connected to Sanibel. So they meet once in a while, and I help them in administrative hearings, the Division of Administrative Hearings. We challenged some water quality rules. Although we didn't win at the hearing, Governor DeSantis has come on board, and he's implemented the water quality standards that we were asking for. So we're delighted to make some success there. I've served as city attorney for coastal barrier island cities just like this one, Bradenton Beach, which is on Anna Maria Island. Anna Maria Island has 3 cities, Anna Maria, Holmes Beach, and Bradenton Beach, which has Coquina Beach on the southern end of the island. And it's just north of Longboat Key. I forgot to give my addresses. Ralph Brooks, 1217 East Cape Coral Parkway, number 107, Cape Coral, Florida, 33904. And also, Gulf of Mexico Drive, number 105-5803, Longboat Key, Florida, 33428. I spent some time in Longboat, too. I've been coming to St. Augustine Beach since 1985, when I first went to the University of Florida and discovered Crescent Beach and St. Augustine Beach, and came over here every opportunity that I could. For my recreational activities, my number one thing at the time was surfing. So I was here all the time. I studied marine biology, and I'm in love with the ocean and oceanography and marine land, being here in Matanzas, all these great areas for kayaking and fishing. So in my outdoor recreational activities, I've been coming here forever, and I continue to come here. Currently single, and I do travel a lot around the state. I can tell you that in Bradenton Beach, we had a pier. We had pier issues, rebuilding piers, pier concession, a restaurant on the pier. We have anchorage issues with a mooring field. We worked on vacation rentals because we had McMansions coming in and knocking over the old Florida cottages. So we were trying to defend that sense of place. I like to work for local governments at the time when the commission is united. It's very difficult to work for a split commission, which is what's happening in Madeira Beach right now. It's 3-2, and there's an election coming up in March, and so I don't know how much longer I will be there. But I would prefer to work with a unified commission that's doing innovative, progressive ideas. Straw bans, the plastic bag bans, the styrofoam bans, being innovative to find a way around the smoking prohibitions, if you will, and that a cigarette butt is litter. There's no if, and, or buts about that. It is litter. So you can adopt a litter ordinance even though you can't adopt an ordinance that says you can't smoke on the beach. And so addressing the problem in that way is innovative. Those are the kinds of things I like to do, the kinds of advice that I like to give. I like to find ways to accomplish progressive, good things to protect our coastal dunes and coastal barrier islands. Turtle lighting ordinances, I've written a bunch of those. I've done interlocal agreements. I've done many public works contracts for streets, roads, piers, other public improvements. I helped rewrite a personnel manual with the civil service commissions, and we have grievance policies and fair due process hearings that are very similar to the Officers' Bill of Rights in 112. I will have to get together with you and examine what you're doing and how you're doing it. St. Pete Beach, we had a police department, they had a process in place already that was working well, not only for that, but for forfeitures. So we didn't have to do a lot of revamping, we just wanted to make sure we're on top of it. We've also implemented some interesting, innovative city charter provisions in Madeira Beach, including qualifications for the charter officers, including the clerk, the attorney, the city manager. We have supermajority votes on planned developments. That means 4 out of 5 would have to vote. We had 3 major hotel projects came in at 8 stories when the normal land development code only allows 3 stories. By using planned development, they were able to get deviations for height, which has resulted in the new majority. So a number of issues have been going on there. They're dealing with civility codes. I noticed you talked about that. They are having trouble with civility even on the board themselves. They routinely have shouting matches. But they are progressing, and we're doing some great things there. We do sunshine and public records classes. I also like to explain zoning, and zoning is best explained proactively before there is an application. If you've never heard of Snyder versus Brevard, I go all around the state. Most cities and counties are not informed of what the actual Florida Supreme Court test is for a rezoning. First, you must find it consistent with the comp plan and in compliance with the LDC, but then you can still deny a rezoning for any legitimate public purpose, as long as you articulate what that purpose can be. It can be traffic safety issues, it can be pedestrian circulation issues, it can be violating the sense of place, or the definition of compatibility, which is that 2 uses can coexist over time in perpetuity without one unduly impacting the other. So you may have developments that unduly impact existing and surrounding land uses. You don't have to approve those. It's important to have in your comp plan and your LDC something that preserves the sense of place. So I can help your building official and your planning and zoning board write LDRs that take what you have here and translate that into land development code language, so that when you're building buildings, they match. You don't drive down the street and see a giant edifice built up to the edge of the street and say, oh my God, that was not there 5 years ago. I lecture frequently at CLEs and to the Florida League of Cities, at the Florida Municipal Lawyers Association, and defending city and county local government denials on takings law, on Harris Act cases. I don't have any conflicts here. I represent no developers in the area. I answer my own phone. I don't have a support staff. I do everything on my own. I have numerous laptops and Apple computers and PCs and a really nice home office, and I work on the road. Your meetings, I would come to probably the night before, spend the day here at the office, attend this meeting. I'm on Orbitz, so I book a hotel whenever the meeting's done. It's usually where you get the best prices and figure out where you're going to be. So I book a hotel, and then I sleep there, and then I wake up and come back into the office and do any follow-up, any action items that arose out of the meeting. Make sure I have all those action items down. Make sure I know what everyone's doing and be able to meet with the city manager and planning department. So I do travel quite a bit. I travel on my own dime. I pay for my mileage, I pay for my car lease, I pay for any airplanes that I take, I pay for all my own meals. I consider that an expense of doing business. What I think I do is a joy. I think it was Jacques Cousteau said, when your personal life and your work life are one and the same, that's the best life. So I do what I like doing, and I do this because I want to do it, and I don't do it to make a lot of money. I do it for the opportunities and the people I meet, the issues I get to address, and the places I've gotten to work. In my 25 years of doing this, I'm certified in city, county, and local government law, which is hard. You have to take a test, you have to go through peer review, you have to be renewed every 4 years. It's much different than just joining the section. You can be a section member just by paying the $25, but you have to actually take so many more CLEs. You have to take tests. You have to renew these all the time. So that's a big deal. I've been that for 15 years. I've also been special magistrate for what they call Florida Land Use and Environmental Dispute Resolution Act, the FLUEDRA cases. They're like Burt Harris, Part 1. I've defended Burt Harris claims. I've been a mediator as well as been in mediations on behalf of cities. I've handled employment disciplinary actions. I work usually with insurance counsel on EEOC complaints or employees that sue the cities. So I work on that as well. I think I tried to answer most of the questions that you had, but you may have some others specifically tailored for me. I know I'm one person. I can tell you that I know all the lawyers that have come up in front of you today, even outside this process. I know who they are, and I met most of them in email, and Lonnie and I exchange ideas on the internet along with a bunch of other city attorneys, all competent counsel, all very competent. So in the event that I would take ill, I would probably maybe call on one of these, or the second choice, I would come to you first. If you decide that you want me to be your city attorney, we'll work out who would be my substitute. And so it would be someone that could be here for you. But I do intend on trying to be here for all your meetings. I would ask the courtesy that if you do a special meeting, that you call me first before you set it, so I can just check my calendar. Or while I'm sitting there and you're discussing, can we go over to tomorrow, if you could ask me, are you going to be available tomorrow, so that we don't have an empty chair. I'd rather have us all be there. I know it's not too far for you all to go, and if we could accommodate just that courtesy for me, that would be very helpful.
Thank you. When we do set a special meeting, we usually do consult with the board members here, and I intend to consult with staff, just to make sure, and of course, you would be included on setting special meetings, as long as you realize sometimes our meetings do run over, and from Monday to a Tuesday. We have tried, since our meetings do run over, we've tried to set a schedule as much as possible, the first Monday of the month, and then if we can't get done, we just continue it on that Tuesday night.
That's
so
fine.
everybody kind of knows what
My days
that is.
right now are the second Tuesday and the fourth Tuesday, so we should be able to work around that. So.
Fourth Tuesday.
And that might change.
Okay,
So
all
that might
right.
even open up.
Okay, any questions from commissioners? Laura,
We'll
I'm
start down
sorry,
here
I'm picking on you first, I'm just being consistent.
I've been picked on all day. I'm good with it.
I know the feeling sometimes.
Mr. Booker, I appreciate you having the bones of a plan for a backup, for if you couldn't make our meeting, if there was a scheduling conflict. You are aware of the planning and zoning meeting schedule also?
Yes.
For us? Okay.
And code enforcement as well.
And code enforcement as well?
And I'll probably be here some other days as well. Like I said, I'd like to come the day before a meeting, the day after the meeting.
I believe you said your primary office location or residence was in Cape Coral. Do you have work down there, municipal work or other work down there?
I have a statewide practice, so I represent a few citizens groups in Lee County, but also all around the state as well. So I just left the city of Fort Pierce last Monday. They voted 5-0 to deny a 24/7 convenience store in a residential area on a very dangerous curve on an FDOT road that they didn't have control over. They voted to deny it, and I'm sure we'll be able to uphold it. Those are the kinds of cases I get involved in around the state, but I'll get calls from everywhere, from the Keys up to the Panhandle, Fernandina Beach even, so all over. I'm constantly on the road.
Madeira Beach is a place I'm familiar with. I called it home in 1997 to 99. And
Okay.
before there was a Bubba Gump Shrimp in Johns Pass.
That was a while ago.
Out of curiosity, and also to see how it's relevant for us, why do we see so much large development in a place like Madeira Beach, where it was at the time a place much like St. Augustine Beach, and now we see high-rises on the beach? Can you explain why that's happened and how your experience would help prevent it from happening here?
Well, it all depends on you. You are the ones that vote. You vote first to adopt a comp plan, to express your vision. Every comp plan is supposed to start with a vision. You're supposed to have a planning horizon of 20 years. The state is no longer there to hold your hand. but they will not slap your hand either. So if you would like to adopt a comp plan, you can, and you can make changes and amendments to that anytime you like now. It used to be only twice a year. Then you can implement that with land development regulations, your zoning laws. That's up to you to choose the height, the setbacks, the bulk, the density, the intensity of development, and work with all these planning constraints to replicate what it is that you want to see as part of your vision. And then you'll have individual applications that come before you. And that's when it's sometimes hard to say no. You have to look at someone in the eye, maybe someone that's politically active, that's well-known in your community, respected, trusted, and you actually like them and you like their business, but sometimes you need to say no. And yet need to be able to say no by turning to your staff report. Some cities are now doing reasons for approval, reasons for denial, or conditions if you do approve, to give you the choices and point you to the right comprehensive plan sections. There's some city councils that aren't given copies of their comp plan in paper, so they could take them home and read them. The future land use element, the conservation element where you address turtles, the transportation element where you address circulation, pedestrian, and complete streets. These are things that you could implement in your comp plan, and you can deny things that are not consistent with your comp plan, which is your vision. So that's how you can implement them. Why do things sometimes go the other way? Is because new commissioners will come in, they'll rewrite things, new applications will come in. Sometimes there'll be loopholes that it's so big that you can drive a truck through. Planned development can seek a deviation from any height, any intensity, any bulk. Any number of units. They can get more hotels than they're normally allowed if they ask for a PD. They get more rooms. And they have a very weak deviation standard. It's very difficult for a citizen or a resident to challenge an approval if a PD is done. Those things can happen. So you want to be aware of what's in your plan. There are pitfalls, there are traps. You want to close those doors. You want to write your plans and your comp plans to accomplish your vision. You want to have long-range vision. You want to try to move some things in like sea level rise. The state is giving out grants to do adaptation action area plans. They'll give you $25,000 to write that part of your plan, so you can hire consultants and planners to help you. You want to make sure that if you're going to do something, you have innovative land development management techniques. Not just impact fees, but that's part of the puzzle. Make sure usually you'll want to have someone come in from the outside because it's simply too hard as a building official, planning staff who have applications stacked in their inboxes and building plans. It is one of the hardest jobs in the world. You will not have enough time to do the forward-thinking planning unless you have someone else outside helping you, doing charrettes not only with you, but with the citizens, with the people that live here, doing them to find out what it is that people want to see in their community, what's missing, how can it be done better, what innovative ideas are out there you might consider. And sometimes a planner will have an idea that gets shot down by the local citizenry, interconnecting developments. Great planning concept when it comes to actual people within the subdivision. We don't want that. We don't want them cutting through here. Or roundabouts. Oh, we'll never be able to navigate a roundabout. Takes up too much space. So you have to work out all those issues as you go through it. But it's a good effort. It's fun. It's actually interesting, and it makes you feel like the time that you have spent here working with this city has not been for naught. You've actually accomplished some good things that will last into the future. And if you have a charter, put things in your charter. That way, a future commission has to go to the voters to get them removed.
Thank you, Mr. Briggs. Mr. Bromwell, any further questions?
Why St. Augustine Beach?
I've been coming here for years. It's a place that I would like to come now and spend time with. I love the dunes, I love the beach, I love this whole area, like Northeast Florida. This is where I would like to come and focus my local government effort on.
Any conflict of interest with any people or groups within St. Augustine Beach?
No.
Okay, and obviously timing, you mentioned about getting a hotel room a night before, 2 nights, or what have you. Do you foresee any problems being here on time? I know it's about a 4.5-hour drive.
I'll be coming out the day before.
Okay.
Sleeping and walking the beach, and then coming in here early for coffee and seeing what's happening. in and out all the time, so.
And then are you familiar with any of our ordinances regarding trash or tobacco, cigarettes, or anything like that?
Yeah, very nice. Very good innovative work. You're going to have to keep fighting for your rights. Home rule is an issue. I know the Florida League of Cities lobbyist, and I know their attorney, Craig Kahn, and I worked with them before. And in fact, I went to law school with Craig Kahn, and he was in my same class. And they are there for you. They're trying to do what they can. And I think with Governor DeSantis, you saw him veto a bill. So I think we have some good policies on the books. It's tough for them to say, well, local governments know best, or you know what to do in your area, but then they try to preempt you. So you want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Some very powerful lobbyist groups in Tallahassee. I practiced there for 3 years. I know it's like to go against Associated Industries of Florida or the Florida Builders Association. I've worked on the Growth Management Act and the Growth Management Community Planning Act in 2011. Yankeetown actually sued the state over the 2011 Act because we wanted to grandfather in our charter. We settled that suit. The legislature keep our charter. We're one of 3 charters in the state that's allowed to have referendum on plan amendments where no one else can.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Sure. So I'm going to address the elephant in the room. As you know, we were given an article from the,
Tampa Bay Weekly News.
thank you, Tampa Bay News, that addresses the Madeira Beach. The title of the article is Madeira Beach, City Attorney Under Fire, which talks about a little of what you had mentioned earlier, the divide, what appears to be a divide on the commission. But the thing that caught my eye and my concern, which goes along with not having a support staff, is where it states that you have hired separate attorneys for legal advice without consulting, the commission. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. We have an attorney from the Gray Robinson firm, Tom Gonzalez, who's an excellent employment lawyer. He's probably one of the best in the whole state. He was hired by the city of Madeira Beach before I became city attorney. When I started, every time we had an employment issue, I'd call Tom. There was a newly elected commissioner who said, well, I never got to approve him. So his approval is up on the contract for renewal on tomorrow night. So that's going to be handled there. The other attorney was handled or paid for by the insurance company. So the insurance company gets to choose who that is. There is a way to reject that attorney if you want to, but that attorney's done quite a good job, so he was never rejected. Again, this new commissioner from the minority came on board and doesn't like him and doesn't like Tom Gonzalez. And so he has called their opinions asinine and idiotic. Personal attacks, violation of civility code. Yet these attorneys are excellent attorneys. So I stand by them. When we brought them to the workshop, the entire commission said, okay, these attorneys are fine. And, they're satisfied with that now.
Okay, so these were attorneys that were approved by the board or were brought in by you? And
One was
not
approved by a previous board. I was not there. And we just let that attorney keep working as our employment outside counsel. We're bringing him back now with the request of this commissioner, but I think he's even agreed that he should be approved. And the other one was an insurance defense counsel that's appointed by the insurance company. And that was brought before him, and he's fine with that, too.
Okay, and I would just like to say that I really admire and respect your outlook on the environmental sensitivity, especially in our area. So thank you, and across the state.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for your work.
If you don't choose me as your city attorney and you have an issue that you think that I might be good for, I'd be more than happy to help you on that particular issue. So just keep me in mind. I handed you a business card. So, let me know if there's anything I can ever do for you or your citizens.
That's all the questions I have, Madam Mayor.
Commissioner George?
Well, only since you had some free-flowing ideas on some other things earlier, I'll ask a quick question. We have a limit on our transient rentals permits that could be issued in the medium density land district area. And we've had a proliferation of requests for conditional use permits in the commercial district. So rather than seeking zoning change, they're trying to, get the transient rental by using the conditional use permit for building residential in the commercial district. So
That's clearly an end run around the
Yes,
intent. So you need
exactly.
to revisit your land development code, and you'll need to address that issue. Because it's a conditional use, and it's not something anyone's entitled to, you're on better footing than most with regard to Burt Harris Act. You do have to be careful of some state preemptions on vacation rental ordinances per se, but then again, you need someone with experience on that issue to help you work through it. And there are bills going to be, that bills I've already introduced. Today was the first day of the legislative session. So you'll want to keep an eye on what goes on in Tallahassee. The Board of Realtors has lobbyists, the Florida League of Cities has lobbyists. They're both pretty influential. You want to make sure yours wins.
Exactly.
I think that even the Board of Realtors, NAR and FAR, they are not in favor of unregulated vacation rentals. One of the problems we had in the Florida Keys when I was there for Monroe County, we tried to regulate vacation rentals, and we had, I think, 6 or 7 planning commission meetings. Finally, they proposed 2 recommendations, one to ban them and one to allow them. And then it went to the county commission, and they had 3 or 4 continued hearings. They start. They said, let's go to advisory referendum. They went to the vote of the people. It was 49.8 to 50.2 to regulate them. And so they came up with regulations, which in each zoning category were different, and a few exemptions for contained high-rises that could have their own HOA rules. And they had to come up with regulations about who would manage and be on call, and how the garbage and recycling would work, and how many people could be in the units.
Well, I'm glad to hear.
If you're not careful, it takes over the whole fabric of your town.
Right,
Because you can make more money with a vacation rental, and people that own homes will eventually decide there's too much activity, I'm going to sell, and they'll sell out, and then now it's Airbnb, VRBO, and you don't have any residents left.
Right, yeah. It's,
I exaggerate, but that's the idea.
well, it's like a snowball rolling downhill,
Yeah,
just.
it can change the sense of place of your city, can change with the built environment and with the uses that happen,
Okay, great.
and traffic.
Okay. I think that you've covered everything else on my list, but just to kind of reiterate, as far as how many other cities you would be representing at the same time as us, could you just speak to that briefly? I think I got a little lost in the timeline. Are you currently representing in the Keys and on the West Coast?
No, right now I just have Yankeetown, and that's on on-call basis.
Okay.
That runs maybe 8 to 10 hours a month. That's it. And then I have Madeira Beach, that's the second Tuesday and the fourth Tuesday. And I don't know that that's going to go on past March.
Okay.
It'll depend on the election. In this business, you depend on who is the elected officials, and the pendulum swings, and sometimes you're in, sometimes you're out, and the politics,
Right.
it happens at the federal level, the state level, and the local government level especially.
Well, having served on a divided commission, I completely understand. And it is much better to work with a or not divided one. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and I also appreciate your environmental sensitivities.
I think you
Thank
all have
for
done a wonderful job of identifying what it is you want to do in your town, and doing some vision and working together, and allowing all kinds of input from your citizenry. It's a really nice place to want to work. I want to come here and help you. I would enjoy being here in this environment where people help each other. So that's what I'm looking for too.
Just to show how unified we can be, Commissioner George read my mind about the question about the conditional use permits, because they are perplexing for us sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and we have, as a unified commission, we have sort of taken a different tact on them, where they might have been conditionally just granted, in the past. Quite often, we are putting a halt to things right now because of the end run around short-term rentals, and trying to preserve our commercial zoning where it is appropriate.
In the Keys, I can point out one other thing that may be helpful to you. We had a ratio of residential to commercial. There was, in the Keys, there's so many homes, and there's only small islands, and there's very small commercial areas. And one of the things we looked at was a planning basis for how much commercial square footage you would need per capita, and looking at that and trying to preserve that there was some commercial area. The same thing in my city of Cape Coral. They have so many residents. It was platted in 1954 by the Rosen brothers, and they didn't really make any commercial nodes. So now the city has had to do things like offer $1 million incentives for assemblages of residential lots and asking them to rezone to commercial so they can put actual commercial centers in.
Mr. Brooks, you've heard a lot of the questions from our staff, and so in the essence of time, I'm going to try to, if you can address some of those questions, but before that, City Manager, I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask.
You're listed as the city attorney for Yankeetown, and they meet the first Monday of each month. And you say sometimes you're there and sometimes you don't have to be there. But what happens if they need you there and we're meeting the same time?
They'll come to your meeting. They call me and say, we'll have a special meeting whenever we can get you up there. They want me there for a special issue. They'll have a special meeting usually. And I've attended one meeting last year, and I think it was 2 meetings the year before. And then I attended the BioBlitz, which they have citizen science. They go out and count species of birds and mammals and reptiles that we sleep in the center there at the Withlacoochee Gulf Preserve, and we have scientists from UF come in. It was a wonderful experience. I took my middle daughter, and she had an awesome time. But I don't have to, those meetings, and that town council works with me to set up special meetings so I can be there for them.
Well, these are not listed as special meetings. This is their regular meeting time.
No, yeah, I don't go to their regular meetings, no. There are only 700 people. They don't have a lawyer that sits with them.
But you are their attorney of record, though.
Yes, that's correct.
So if they need you at their regular meeting and we're meeting the same day, what happens?
I'll call the clerk, and I'd say we need to reschedule that meeting to Wednesday or Thursday, and they'll do it.
You were in St. Pete Beach for 1 year. Why did you leave?
Again, the pendulum swung. I was there when we had a good, what I call a nice commission, and the development interests came in, and they swept the commission, and I resigned rather than working for a commission that didn't want me there. So,
In the time of the Ken Weiss era?
yes, it was, exactly.
You say you travel the state and do a lot of work elsewhere. You're traveling fairly frequently, you say. What happens if, say, you had an accident or something and you were unable to come here, you were laid up for a time? Who would be our city attorney?
Yeah, that's what I will come back to you. If you choose me, I'll come back to you and make sure we approve a person. I would think we might start with the second choice here. I would tell you, when you are going to do your voting, the easiest way is to make a motion and a second and vote that. If you are going to rank candidates, it's very important that you vote for every available spot, that you don't just pick 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because that was a controversy in St. Pete Beach, how they did the voting, if they took the low score, but then there were a couple commissioners that only picked 2 instead of ranking all 5, and that skewed the votes tremendously. So you just want to be careful how you do that. There are a couple other ways to do it too, but just be mindful how that works. And also with the Sunshine Law, your attorney's not here, just that under Sunshine Law, you can't take the ballots home with you. You have to say who you vote for. You can, if you do a ranking, you have to put your name on it, so that everyone in the public knows who voted for who and who's ranked who. It's a public record, and under Sunshine Law, you have to do that.
Those are my questions, Mayor.
Okay.
I write ordinances every week. I probably write 2 or 3, sometimes 4 different ordinances every week. So it's something I normally do. I usually have a template, and then I work with MuniCode. And you can go to other cities and see what they have in their codes, but you don't want to just blindly grab stuff. You want to think about it, what your vision is, what you want to be in there, and then you want to wordsmith and examine each one of those words and make sure each one of those words is defined. And don't assume that you can rely on a Webster dictionary because Merriam-Webster might be different than another dictionary. So you want to make sure that you think these things through and look at them as if you were going to be a challenger or as if you were going to try to knock it out.
And I think our city clerk asked about HR. Do you have any background in HR?
Yes, I do, and especially lately, there's been a lot of HR issues that I've been dealing with, grievance committees, EEOC complaints, personnel manuals, civil service board meetings for progressive discipline and termination, challenges by lawyers in court afterwards. So those are all things I deal with currently,
And
too.
can you quickly address some of the other issues the police chief, building department, Public Works brought up, if you don't mind doing that?
Yeah, I will have to get together with him and find out what they do for the Officers' Bill of Rights proceedings. I'm familiar with the statute and what the requirements are. Usually there is a pretty good system in place. We just want to make sure that it's happening. It's everything from citizen complaints about police officers, making sure the police officer gets a fair trial, but also when it deals with internal investigations. If we have to investigate an officer from some internal suspicion, we have a managerial role as well as making sure that the officer also has their rights protected. So just because you represent policemen doesn't mean you represent police departments. And again, it's managerial versus employees. It's the old labor versus management struggle, which I took in law school and was always a debate in every class, and there's always two perspectives. But here, as a city attorney, I'm part of management. We want to make sure that the employees' rights are protected,
Okay.
due process in particular.
Right, and quickly, building department ordinances, I'm sure you've got expertise in
And
that.
contracts for
and
Public Works.
Public Works, okay.
And interlocal agreements, and grants, and grant administration. Can't remember if there are what the other questions were.
Any staff member want to ask any additional questions that maybe haven't been addressed? Yeah, yes, I think so. So,
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to make sure that he agreed to the modified terms. I didn't see a follow-up submittal. Did you have any hesitations with regard to the return terms that the city manager circulated?
No, in your book, I checked them all off. I don't know if it didn't make it in your agenda packet, but where I was sent by the clerk, said agreed, and I signed off on all of those. I'm fine with the
That was like
6,000 and the 175, and Exhibit B I attached.
Okay, great, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, for some reason I didn't get a couple of those.
I can hand you one.
well, I think, Mr. Brooks, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for letting me come to your beautiful city.
All right, is Mr.
He's
Craig
here.
Shara? Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. Craig Sherrar, 147 Pine Tree Road, East Palaca, Florida. I guess I should start with a little bit about myself, and I would like to indicate one thing. As I go through this discussion, you're going to find that my depth of working in government is not quite what everybody else is. I have not represented endless number of boards in a whole bunch of cities and things like that, but I am currently the town attorney for Paramount Park. We have 900 people and they need me at every meeting. I don't know how Yankee Town is getting away with it, but anyway. But my involvement with government is very broad. I don't think there's anybody else here that has sat in the chairs that you all are sitting. I sat in a town almost exactly the same as St. Augustine Beach, city of South Miami. We had 10,000 people, 2 miles long, 1 mile wide. I've been what would be called a community activist. I was a very vocal member of a group that caused a referendum about building restrictions in our town, which we lost by 3 votes. But did lead to a lot of changes because nobody realized that it was that kind of a vote. I've been before code enforcement boards, both as property owners, representing property owners, and prosecuting property owners. Same thing with zoning. Same thing with comp plan, just like everybody else, we had to do our comp plan review, and 3 years ago, the town of Pomona Park did its comp plan review, and I was part of that comp plan review. And I believe as a result of that, I have developed a way of looking at things and helping my governmental client in a way which is somewhat unique from what other people might give. And I'd like to give an example. You know, traditionally with code enforcement, I've always looked at code enforcement as kind of like pounding the property owner into compliance, which the fact of the matter is, a lot of times you're never, ever going to get them in compliance. Y'all are a little bit unique over here, like we were in South Miami. The last 10 years or 15 years, I've lived in Putnam County, where code enforcement is a giant problem because there's so many vacant lots. And there's nothing you're going to do except you're going to take over the lot. And rather than going through the process, what I've developed in the town of Pomona Park is whenever there's an opportunity, we get the property outside of the code enforcement. And the reason I've developed that is because I am a person that goes out and finds properties that nobody else wants and obtain ownership on them and rehab them. And as a result of that, we've had 2 properties, we're currently working on a 3 in Pomona Park, where we have been able to truncate the code enforcement process by getting the deeds to the property, cleaning them up, and then we turn around and sold them and recouped our cost from it. If we'd gone through the traditional code enforcement route, we'd still be sitting there fighting those people, doing the abatement, getting those sanctions, having them sit. A little bit of my background in law, I was originally a public defender as an intern in Dade County. I actually tried 5 cases before I was even a licensed practiced attorney. I was in the Army for 4 years, and one of the other gentlemen said that he was at Fort Bragg. I was at Fort Bragg for 3 years. I was at Fort Benning for 1 year. I was a defense attorney, and I was also a legal aid attorney. I worked for Florida Power and Light for 3 years, where I was mainly in their litigation department. Then I was with a firm in Hollywood Beach, and I've been solo basically since 1989. My work as a solo attorney was primarily in the field of construction. So I noticed that your public works officer was asking some questions about expertise in that field. I've done 713, which is not public, but those are liens, 25505s, which is government bonded jobs. I have represented subcontractors, contractors in government contracts. I've represented the government in government contracts. So I've pretty much taken all views that there are as far as that goes. I feel that my main strength is, well, I'm a solo practitioner, just as the prior candidate, and actually I feel that that is a strength. I believe in more proactive working with a client as opposed to reactive working with a client. When I was in solo practice in Miami, I represented 3 of the largest independent concrete companies in Dade County. Even though I was out-house attorney, I was essentially in-house attorney. I'm the kind of guy that if there's something that comes up, I know about something, I see something driving down the road, or I hear something, I would call the presidents of those companies who I was on a first-name basis to let them know about things. There was a question about written communication with the planning director.
Yes, sir.
The other day, I was reminded of how imprecise the English language is. Somebody was doing something and said, he is on the way. The one person took it meaning that he was driving to a certain location. The other person took it to mean that he was on your way to go to where you were going and you were supposed to pick him up. As a result of that, my approach for the problems is, if I get something, be it a phone call or in writing, I generally call the person up and have a discussion with them so that 2 things happen. First of all the little nuances are brought out. We understand what's essentially going on. We work out the issue. And then the writing is more a confirmation of what it is that we discussed, as opposed to a person coming to me and asking a question, and then me regurgitating something back, and then coming back to me saying, oh yeah, but what about this? And I'm sure that you've all experienced this in your lives, the endless change of emails. So, I have to say this, I was very impressed by all the people that were here, especially a couple of them. I know that y'all are going to ask me about what would happen with me if I was not able to do something. Well, I happen to know Charlie and Lex. I refer cases to them, they refer cases to me. Charlie and I are in Kiwanis together. He doesn't know this, but if I were to get the job, the first person I would go to say, hey, if I need coverage over in the city of St. Augustine Beach, could you guys provide it for me? Because I'm aware of what he does. He's in the same town as I are, and we have that connection. So that's basically it. If y'all have any other specific questions?
Why break?
So you were expecting it.
You're a solo attorney, but I wanted to ask specifically, do you have any support staff that you use on a regular basis?
Yes, I do. I have, currently, I've got a girl that I'm training, and I have a part-time secretary who works remotely, but he's starting to go through health issues, and so that's why I'm training somebody new.
The paralegals or just?
I'm kind of old school. I always look at this. I know secretaries that are better lawyers than lawyers. The part-time secretary I have has been doing it for about 30 years. She's worked in a whole bunch of different jobs. She's also worked with a municipal government, so she understands what goes on with that. And that's the kind of training I'm giving the new girl that I'm bringing in.
And how long did you serve as a commissioner?
2 years. I didn't run for re-election. Well, actually, I ran, I lost, I ran, I won, and then the third time when I was up for re-election, I moved to Palatka. Where actually I've run for commissioner over there, never successfully, but I would like to say in conjunction with that, I am a solo practitioner. I have started to shed a lot of my work. Most of my income right now comes from my, for lack of a better term, real estate deals that I'm working on. That is a very flexible program I have. I work with 2 other people. My job is basically a research and contact people and close deals. So as a result of that, I don't have to be in court a lot at 9 o'clock. I don't have to be here a lot at this time. It's a very flexible schedule that I have. I see this job as a nice fit, which is why I was applying for this, because it ties in with me pulling back from the litigation and the other things that I've been doing, and something that I can still continue to do. I will tell you this, and the HR people in the room are going to jump through their skins when I say this, but I'm getting up there, but I would not look at this job as what we used to call in the Army a road job, which is retired on active duty. If I take a job, I take the job to do it, and I would spend the time at it. Like I say, this fits. If it didn't fit, I wouldn't even be here making this application, because I can work around. And it's interesting, when I was here at your last meeting, I mean, it was like flashback to my South Miami days, the people in the audience and the going over late and how long things went on and the discussions. We have different kind of discussions in Pomona Park. But I think that it would be a good fit. I understand what the schedule is. It's easy for me to work around it.
Commissioner Brumwell?
Yep. Thank you for applying. I appreciate that. The same types of questions I had for everybody else. St. Augustine Beach, why did you apply?
Well, the amount of time it takes me to get from where I live, which is East Palatka, to here, is actually less than the amount of time it would take me to get to work in Miami, which was less than half the distance. So getting here is not that is nothing. The other thing is, like I say, it's a small town. I like the small town atmosphere. You guys seem to have a lot of the issues that we were having 20 years ago in South Miami, just basically because Miami is so far ahead. You know, people like to say, well, we don't do it the way to do it in Miami. 20 years from now, you're going to be doing it the way to do it in Miami, because it's just so much acceleration. I mean, just to give you an example, there are more cases filed in Dade County in a day than in Putnam County in a year. So the number of things that are going on is so much more accelerated. So there's this place is similar to a place that I lived in for a long time. The way the commission is functioning is similar to the way that I'm used to dealing with. And it also is a nice fit. Like I said, I'm winding down my litigation practice. I know where 42 of the 67 courthouses are in the state of Florida. And I enjoy my work with the city of South Miami. I mean, I enjoy my work with the city of Pomona Park, the town of Pomona Park. And it seems like that would be a nice carryover to this. There are gaps and things that I can't do. I mean, we do not have a police department, so I have no idea what any of that is. You were talking, I think, something about veteran rehiring. You know, it's funny, we have 2 office staff, and of course, I've been there now about 8 or 9 years. We actually had that issue with one of our office staff. So even though we're much smaller, there are things that we come in touch with. But I'm not worried about that. That's the kind of thing that I can be brought up to speed fairly quickly on, I think.
And you're amenable to the new price and everything, because just by looking at what you had put before, you did 200 per hour, which came to about $8,000 a month.
Right, and you all had the 150, or the 6,000 or $150 an hour.
175.
175, didn't find that out. The only thing, on my supplement, I pointed this out. Fee arrangements are risk-shifting mechanisms. If you have, like in a personal injury case, if you have a contingency case, they like to say the risk is on the lawyer. The risk isn't on the lawyer because a lot of them settle. But really, the contingency, the concept of it is the risk is on the attorney. If you lose the case, you're the one that loses everything, the client doesn't. I don't really like flat fee arrangements because it tends to impose upon the attorney that I'm supposed to be making $175 an hour, but then I hit this, my maximum, my 6,000, but I've got to do more hours, so how do I allocate the free hours? And on the other side is if I'm not working that much, one of you should be sitting there thinking, why is this lawyer working 20 hours and we're paying him for $6,000? And that's why my proposal was to do an hourly with a cap. If there was time when there was less money, roll it over, and that way you guys can budget, and we all know what it is that's expected, because, you know, there are fluctuations. Now, I do know from my experience with, I mean, I've been involved as a citizen with comp plan review, been involved as the attorney for Pomona Park with comp plan review. That gets pretty intensive. We hired NEFARC to do our comp plan review, but still I was going through and reading everything that they were doing. So, I mean, we had to see how that thing shakes out. And the one thing is this, you know, the parties to a contract can change the contract anytime they want. You got to live with it, but you can agree to look at it. And it should be, especially in this kind of environment where it's fairly amorphous, that people should be adults, and if the situation's not working, somebody in that relationship should say, hey, this is not working, let's take a look at it again. And generally, you can sit there and work it out, because if you want me to fill that seat, and I want to be in that seat, we're going to do something so that it makes sense to everybody.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
I'm going to pass my time, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner George.
Okay. Did you say, are you board certified at all?
I don't take tests very well.
I understand.
I have not tried to take the certification test in government. I took the certification test 3 times for construction. I failed it. I have certified lawyers calling me all the time for questions about 713, and I can't take the test.
Isn't that one the hardest that they have anyway?
You know what, where I messed up was, is someone said, take it this year, and no, and that was easy, that year was easy, so it's,
I have a friend that was preparing for it recently, and I think she said that has the highest failing rate of all of them, so.
oh, I finally just.
You're
gave
probably
up.
in very good company there.
You know, it's interesting, when you take the bar exam right out of law school, you're used to taking a test, and then when you haven't taken a test in 30 years, it's like,
Right.
anyway.
Okay. And are you willing to conduct classes for the advisory boards, the commission, and the staff?
Yes. And in fact, something interesting that was, when I was hearing the other conversations, people on planning boards and people on commissions, the most important thing that you're doing is your zoning. And somebody had said something, and I've realized, I don't think I have ever dealt with a governmental unit where the people on the planning boards and the people on the commission ever had any kind of comprehensive class on that topic. When I was a commissioner in South Miami, we had, because Dade County was about 6 years ahead of everybody when the craziness was going on in '04. Well, we were doing it in '98. And we had huge projects coming on, and nobody, I mean, we'd get up there and they'd go 5 minutes, blah, 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 blah. And you've got these projects, I mean, there's a $20 million project, someone has spent a lot of money going on, and I would sit there and go, I don't know what this is. And the guidance we were getting wasn't really adequate, so yes, I really believe in that happening so that people can understand what it is that they're supposed to be doing.
I do too. They've got to know the standards. I think you already asked that you don't have any conflicts of interest that you're concerned about currently.
No, the only thing I've got going on here is I do some foreclosure defense work and help some people out with the legal aid, and that's the only thing that I have going on, and in fact, that's why I was late. They wanted to give me a plaque, so.
Oh, down at Cosmotica. Oh, good. Well, thank you for helping with the legal aid community. That's very admirable. I think those are all my questions. So.
Okay, so I'll go to staff. Beverly?
What's your experience in personnel and risk management?
Excuse me?
What's your experience in personnel issues and risk management?
And personnel is fairly light. We've had a couple issues when I was over there. They were all dealt with in our personnel manual. We did have an issue about whether or not somebody had military time, which would count for, because we have in our personnel manual, something similar to the state statute about preference.
Right.
So we had to go through that. As far as risk management, it's a little dated, but when I was with FPL, I worked very closely with the risk management department. We were doing the pooling agreements that FPL was pushing in order to be able to get cheaper comp rates. And when I was, this goes back about 15 years, when I was working with the concrete companies, I was often reviewing what their insurance policies were, because at that time there was a big push to go from policy coverage periods to claims made, so that was a big issue. I represent a lot of general contractors, so we always have subrogation issues and whether or not they are or are not going to be included under the insurance, or whether or not the subrogation issue is going to invalidate your insurance. So I'm pretty familiar with those things. On the insurance issue, which I assume that's what you're talking about on the risk management, I like to get involved with the insurance agents because they generally understand the nuances. If you've got a good insurance agent, like you should have somebody for your construction, somebody for your personnel, and somebody for your general liability. Hopefully those people will understand a lot of the nuances and you can have a discussion with them.
And I think you've already mentioned that you did not have an in-depth experience on the police department. Is that correct?
It would basically be able to say I have 0. I would have to get up to speed on that because I don't, they could ask me any question they want. I'm a little up on my criminal law, but as far as the Bill of Rights and those kind of things that they're talking about, I have basically none.
Okay, and with regard to our building department and public works, you've heard some of the questions. Would you like to comment on that, and I'll give them a chance to ask questions?
Well, the one gentleman was talking about the contracts and the capital agreements. Let me kind of preface with this. I'm an attorney, I'm an advisor. I tell clients all the time, it's not my job to tell you not to stick your finger in a sausage machine. It's my job to tell you that if you stick your finger in a sausage machine, you're going to have a sausage and not a finger. If you want a sausage, then go ahead. I am very aggressive on contracts because my experience with government contracts is, and this isn't true about everything because there's very, very good contractors out there, but you got to remember something about lawyers. We're like doctors. We don't see all the great things that happen, we see all the disasters. If you have a $100 million contract and everything gets built and it gets done on time and nobody has an issue, nobody pats the lawyer on the back and goes, wow, you did a great job on that. But if there's a $100,000 contract and it goes in the toilet, that's the one that you hear about. Because of the relative bargaining positions of contracts, I really believe in holding contractors, especially those that do a lot of work with the government, to the agreements that they drew up. Government contracts are not a step in negotiation. They are a conclusion of negotiation. And what I really look for in my government contracts is when you get a government contract and the change orders start coming in. And they come in, and they come in, and they come in. And when you start getting 10% of your contract is going out as change orders and you aren't stopping, I mean, I don't know if this is your experience, but you get 10% of your change orders and contracts, somebody didn't bid the job right, and somebody's trying to pull something over. And generally, that comes out very easily. Now, that's not my job. I would sit down with that gentleman or any other gentleman and say, hey, you know what, in my experience, they're snowing you. Now, sometimes you got to, it's like they say, when you're up to your butt in alligators, you got to remember the objective is to drain the swamp. And like I said before, if there's a contract and everybody wants to do it, people bid jobs wrong for all sorts of reasons. Some people bid jobs wrong because that's the way they do business. And a decision has to be made, and it either is made by him as a contract officer or you all as a commissioner, but it needs to be brought to your attention. And it should be brought to your attention not at the end of the contract when everything has gone in the toilet, but sometime before that, because generally those kind of problems do not happen at the end, they're happening somewhere in the beginning.
Very interesting, good advice. Mr. Tredick, anything else?
The only other question that I'd asked of the others was ordinances, interlocal agreements, things like that we will need to draft from time to time.
I draft, I like to say I draft more of my ordinances than what we do, but what we're going through right now in Pomona Park, I'm drafting more ordinances. I'm familiar with the procedure. I just need to get the format that you want to do it in, because a lot of places have different formats, and it's really not a problem with drafting them up. Like the other gentleman said, I mean, none of us live in a vacuum. Take a look at what everybody else has got. There's no crime in plagiarizing government ordinances and come up with what it is that you're going to need to accomplish what it is that you want to do.
No other questions?
Mr. Law, anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
Yeah, just two questions. What does Pomona Park pay you as their town attorney?
They just gave me a raise. I get $1,000 flat fee. That's for one meeting, regular council meeting, plus 4 hours of work. If we have a special meeting, it's $150. And if I go over the 4 hours, it's either $150 or $200. We just changed it, and I forget which it is.
Generally, we're not going over that.
You mentioned at the beginning you do real estate deals.
Yes.
Have you done any real estate deals in St. Augustine Beach?
St. Augustine Beach, no. I've only done one thing over here, which is I bought a tax certificate. That was on a piece of property up off of Lewis Speedway.
Those are my questions.
Okay. And I don't have any further questions. So I wish to thank you so much for coming and giving your time for this application.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've actually learned some things here, so I'm glad I've participated. Thank you.
So much. Okay. Have I covered all the law firms? Have I?
You've covered them all.
Okay. All right. Considering our city attorney is not here, considering the fact that we haven't talked about the process that we are planning to use on selecting a law firm, I'm not sure we should wait until our city attorney can be present in the process, not in selecting, but in the process of selecting, because Mr. Brooks brought up something to my attention on the process that I don't feel like we are fully prepared for or have discussed.
Talking about the ballot process?
Yes.
And what method to use?
Yes, yes.
I mean, we could agree amongst ourselves to decide, or are you suggesting delaying until we have the city attorney and then cast the votes when the city attorney is here to guide us, or?
I'm thinking that way so that we have time for an adequate discussion on, first of all, there's wonderful applicants tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, and give us time to absorb the information, to take a look at everything, and then discuss our method we're going to use for the ballot. And that could be early tomorrow night. And so I just feel like we may need to take a breath and spend more time on the process to make sure it's fair, because these are wonderful applicants. And I feel we need to give really good consideration overnight to what we've heard tonight.
But you'll allow public comment tonight?
Yes,
Yeah,
public
good.
comment tonight.
Good.
And then see if we want to go any further on some of the agenda items as a continuation. But I'm open to comments from commissioners on that plan.
I want to say that I was along the same lines of thinking, because we have some fabulous applicants, and I want to thank all of you for applying to our beautiful city. And it is going to be one of the most difficult decisions that we've probably had to make in a very long time. So I think that it is actually, and I was thinking, I would really like to digest more of like what I've heard, as well as, look at my notes and things as well. So I would not be opposed to, giving us some time to digest the information and coming back to do that. But I think that we definitely should take public comment. Anybody else?
So,
I just think everybody needs to be comfortable with the process, and if that's what is going to make you comfortable, then I can go either way with it.
okay, all right, well, let's go ahead and take public comment right now on our
Okay,
applicants.
and I just wanted to ask, because the city manager brought up the fact, did you want to give public comment 3 minutes or 2 minutes? And we only have 2.
I would say 3 minutes would be fine.
Okay. All right, the first is Mr. Ed Slavin.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Ed Slavin, box 3084, staugustgreen.com. I want to thank you for the process.
Just 1 second, I'm so sorry.
Okay. And thank you for giving me the 3 minutes. I love the process. You did
Okay.
it very well when you chose James Patrick Wilson as your city attorney. I won't recount that. And I recommend Ralph Brooks. I first encountered Ralph Brooks in 2009 when he was hired by some of the residents who were opposed to Fish Island. And Fish Island is now ours. It's been purchased by the state. He was hired by then County Commissioner J. Kenneth Bryan Commissioner J. Kenneth Bryan in his personal capacity as a resident of the Pelican Reef subdivision and some of his neighbors, and he did an excellent job as an advocate for the community on Fish Island in front of St. Augustine City Commission. Also, he's got a thick skin. He was unfairly attacked by a local hate site. I won't call out the name of that hate site, but I'm sure you have encountered it. And it was like water off a duck's back. It didn't affect him. In fact, I think the guy even went in his face and took pictures of him at a meeting, if I recall correctly. I next encountered Mr. Brooks in 2011 at a annual environmental law conference, the Public Interest Environmental Law Conference at the University of Florida, which was, like tonight, an intellectual feast. And I saw him interact with the faculty members at the University of Florida in the environmental law and land use planning area. Ralph is really I would say, the Thurgood Marshall of environmental law and land use planning law in the state of Florida, and he's represented governments. But that night, after the banquet, there were about 10 or 12 of us in one of the law faculty members' backyards at Adirondack chairs surrounding a fire pit. And he has peers, but he's one of the top 10 environmental lawyers in the state of Florida. You couldn't do better than to hire him. And then finally, I encountered him another time. I was really kind of surprised, but City of St. Augustine hired him to oppose a citizen in a Department of Administrative Hearings application. And so I saw him try a case and win for the City of St. Augustine on a sewage issue. And I saw him with the law faculty members where he taught at UF. And I saw him at the commission in 2009 on Fish Island. And again, Fish Island is ours. And as Commissioner Henry Dean said back when he was on the Charter Review Commission, it's our village. St. Augustine Beach is a village, and you want to preserve it, and we do care. And as Elihu Root, the great American Secretary of War and Secretary of State, who's a corporate lawyer, said the most important thing that a lawyer for an organization could tell an organization sometimes is, you're damn fools and you can stop. He's the guy. He's the one who's going to tell you that. And he'll represent you fearlessly and without fear or favor. And no more embassy suites, please. Let's preserve our village and preserve and protect the environment here in St. Augustine Beach. And I highly recommend Mr. Ralph Brooks. Thank you.
Mr. Nick Binder?
Nick Binder, 232 Big Magnolia Court, St. Augustine Beach. Listening to the attorneys give their presentation caused me to reflect on my career in state government over 30 years, when I dealt with attorneys, both as a regulator and also attending 15 years of city commission meetings here, and also 14 years as elected official up in New Jersey. You have to feel comfortable with whoever you pick. You've seen different styles of attorneys representing the city over the last 15 years. Some are very aggressive, some basically try to put down anybody asking questions. Other ones are very conservative. They have also represented developers, which causes concern. The present attorney was very active, but he's kind of more family-oriented, I'll put it that way, the last year and a half. So you really have to decide what type of attorney do you want. One of the things that bothered me, and Mr. Slavin mentioned about Embassy Suites, you're in litigation with Embassy Suites. You won the litigation. They're appealing the litigation. If I was your attorney, and I'm not an attorney, I'm an engineer, I've had environmental law courses at Drexel and Rutgers University, I would never have accepted a donation for beach blast-off from somebody you're still in litigation with. It just sets a bad precedent. One of the things I learned when I was on school boards for 14 years, and you attended national conferences or local conferences, do not take anything from anybody. And I would just caution you down the road, whichever turn you get, please get that type of advice, because it's very, very important. I've listened to all of them. All of them have different levels of experience. They have 5 law firms. As Mr. Slavin mentioned, one is very environmentally oriented. But in my mind, that's more as a consultant coming in to help you versus a day in and day out attorney. If you ask my opinion, I would select the firm of Paul, Eklund, Brantz, and Kinnett. I think there represents the interest from DeLand. Municipal experience, you really need that type of experience for whatever that's worth. But again, it's your decision. You have to feel comfortable with the person. That's more important than anything else. Their style has to blend with all of your styles. And I'll give you 19 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those honest comments. Okay, I would suggest that we close these interviews, or Max, please help me here.
Well, go ahead, Commissioner.
I was just going to suggest if we could, actually, Max, if you could recap, to the extent you have it in your records, the methodology that was used for the ballots the last time. Maybe we could just discuss a couple of different, should we discuss a couple of different ways that we can reflect on those means before we pick one tomorrow?
Well, the last time the commission selected an attorney,
Yes.
I don't precisely recall what the process was. I know there was a vote tally, but whether it was done by a ranking, I don't even remember how many there were.
Okay.
In terms of the numbers.
Okay. We've, I recall going through a variety of, over the years, variety of ways. I think some of the ways we've done it in the past was narrow the list down, whether we each pick our top three, and then from there, whoever gets the most numbers of entry into that, the top three, then we get a second ballot, and then we each pick our top one. I think that's one method we've used in the past. I think another method we may have used in the past was, let's say there are 5 applicants. There are 5 votes that you have to distribute, so in theory, you could give 1 vote for each one of them, or you could give all 5 to one. Or if you were split, you could give 3 to one and 2 to the other, or 1 to 1 and 2 and 2, and so, you know what I mean? So then it's just whoever gets the most number of votes makes it into the second round, to shrink it down and then go from there. Those are 2 methods that I remember seeing in the past. So if that helps you meditate till we decide tomorrow.
I think the first method you mentioned, we have used with applicants for commissioner.
Oh, yes, that's right. Mm-hmm.
So for consistency, we probably could use that method. And think about that as long as we pass that by
City attorney.
city attorney and it'll stand.
Yeah.
So we can think about that tonight.
Yeah.
Okay?
That sounds good.
Just a couple of points.
Okay.
You continue this topic till tomorrow night, because it's not on your agenda for tomorrow, but you're just going to continue it.
Okay.
So it'll be, I assume, number 1.
Yes, we'll
Start the meeting.
continue, and tomorrow's meeting will start with
The selection of the,
selection of the attorney. And then we'll go into our continuation of the regular meeting as far as we can get within reason, and we'll have to just go from there.
as they made their presentations, I was picturing whoever was speaking in that chair, and how they would be interacting with you folks. I think Mr. Bender makes up a good point. It's what we call chemistry. Which of these candidates do you feel you would be most compatible with? Not compatible necessarily that you're going to like them, but they're not going to tell you you're wrong. But just you feel comfortable with that they're going to give you honest professional advice, and they've got the depth of experience that you have confidence in. That they'll give you good advice.
All right.
Just some food for thought.
That's excellent advice, Max. Thank you.
Okay, so we will continue this topic to tomorrow night. And I need some feedback from the commission on whether you want to dive into any other agenda items from the regular meeting or just continue till tomorrow night?
There are two first reading items,
Okay.
which we, first reading is just first reading anyway. So we could get into the meat and potatoes of it more when it comes on.
As the
second reading.
attorney, I'm sorry, Commissioner, as
please.
the attorneys are leaving, I want to thank you all so much for coming tonight. And it just was a enlightening experience talking to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, Commissioner, I'm sorry. Go
So
ahead.
it's just, realistically, we have a lot more work to do this month, and I'm concerned that tomorrow night, we won't be able to get through it all. I'd like to get out of here early, but I'd say maybe we should take a look at a couple. I don't know, it's almost 9, maybe go to 9:15? Forget when do we need the motion?
We, 9:30?
9:30.
So maybe go till 9:30? Okay, so we would start with, and we've done the solid waste collection. We finished item 4.
Start with 5.
Start with 5. And we do have staff here,
Yes, we do.
so that's good, all right?
And if we get caught up with a legal issue, we can just continue to tomorrow
Okay.
on any issue.
Yeah, Mr. Tredick, yes, please.
Didn't know if you had any,
Yeah, we're ready.
Any motions on the special meeting or not? Okay. Bill Tredick, Public Works Director. Agenda item 5 is for additional streetlights. Several times in the past few meetings, there's been discussion of some poorly lit areas along A1A Beach Boulevard and along State Road A1A. I know the chief met with FPL and identified 12 locations along A1A Beach Boulevard where some additional lighting would be in order. And there was also 7 locations, 7 dark intersections along State Road A1A. And those are all shown here in this slide as dots where those locations that the chief identified with FPL and that I met with FPL on State Road A1A. 19 total new locations for streetlights. The city currently has 358 streetlights. We pay a monthly fee of about $3,340 to keep those lit. Just a little background. So this would add 19 new lights to that total. Looking at the 7 locations on State Road A1A, the police station driveway, Pirates Street intersection, Florida Avenue, Acacia Street intersection, Serenity Bay, Sevilla, and Madrid. All those would see lights put, new LED lights at those intersections. The 12 locations on the boulevard at Pope Road intersection, there were 3 locations identified that are particularly dark. There was 1 location directly in front of Embassy Suites and 1 across by Salt Life, which are both dark and they see a lot of pedestrian use. There was 1 new light at Pier Park Crosswalk and 2 new lights proposed at 13th Street intersection. And as you can see, 1 at 7th Street, 1 down at A Street, and 1 at the entrance to Whispering Oaks. The estimated cost for this would be about $200 a month, additional on top of that $3,000 that we're paying now. Some of that, in fact, most of it would be offset when we don't have this item here tonight for the LED conversion, but when we do the LED conversion, a lot of those costs will be mitigated out. And we're also going to talk when we come back for the LED conversion about turtle lights, which do cost about $10 per month per fixture more. So we've met with the county and FPL about
where do we absolutely have to have turtle lights, and I'm going to talk to the chief about that too. There may be some places that we may still opt to darken versus put in turtle lights, and there's some areas where we may want to put in the turtle lights. So we'll be talking about that in the future, but not tonight because we're not quite there yet as far as those locations. The county's going out to identify those again, even though in the past they have, but we're looking at buildings have changed, some things have changed, so they want to make sure that all of those are absolutely necessary. So tonight, we're just looking at the two agreements, and I'm not sure, I think it has to do with how they do their work orders, but we couldn't do one agreement with FPL. We had to do one for the 12 lights and one for the 7 lights. So it's two agreements that we're asking you authorize the city manager to execute these LED lighting agreements and proceed with the installation of the 7 and the 12 new lights. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I have a question about how it was determined about the lighting. I'm just curious about 7th Street, as you know, I live there, because the hotel is right across the street and they have parking lot lights, and my building has a parking lot light on it as well, and the business across the street from me, A1A Auto Works, has a parking lot light as well as a sign light. Do you know how the determination was made?
I'm going to defer to the chief on that one.
We had two community liaisons with FP&L, myself and Commander Ashlock. We physically waited one night till it get dark, and we started one end of the boulevard and drove the entire city. And we discussed light fixtures that weren't extended properly over the sidewalks, that had actually were hidden behind the bushes, just had never been updated. Matter of fact, I think their last estimated update of the streetlights was more than 12 years ago. So we started at, like I said, at Pope Road at Beach Boulevard, and physically drove down the entire boulevard, just identifying areas that weren't not well lit, that they recommended based on their professionals' expertise, and also too, just some exchanging of lights that just have not been updated. So, and that was recently after Embassy was open, so that was, again, the exact date was actually emailed to all 5 of you. So it was us identifying a few dark areas, but it was mostly them and their expertise.
Do you think it's too much lighting there? I mean,
I would question whether or not that it was necessary, really, because directly across the street is the Hampton Inn, and like I said, they have lots of parking lot lights.
Yes, ma'am.
On their property.
If it's the wish of this commission to eliminate some off the plan, that's this commission's wish. That was just based on the expertise of FP&L, does this for a living. And Lee and I addressing areas, our concerns really were pure parking lot, crosswalk there.
Right.
And of course, some of the areas right there where we get our heavily traveled area.
Sure.
But we drove the whole boulevard. And the plan was to update the LED from the current lighting system to LEDs, which gives that more direct light as opposed to outward pattern. And then, of course, there are some, if you haven't drove the A Street, or I'm sorry, A1A recently, there are some areas, especially down by the bowling alley, from there heading southbound that are just, there's no street lights at all. So yes, ma'am, it was simply a proposal to this commission, which I challenged you when I sent you the email to drive the same routes that we drove at nighttime, of course, and during turtle season and outside of turtle season, because they do have some lights that are shut off per the current contract they have with the, not DEP, but our county environmental protection.
Right. My other question, you may not know, this is a county road and a state road, so why are they not paying for the lighting on those roads?
Well, part of our agreement, to my understanding, is that we do that work. We do the street lights on those roads, and I'd have to dig into the original agreements. I don't have them in front of me, but that's my understanding, is that's been the historic agreement with DOT and with the county on those 2 streets.
Okay, thank you.
Be happy to look into it and get you an answer, follow up.
I appreciate it, thank you.
yeah, I would definitely want to know the answer to that question before any action is taken approving the contract. Even so, if we were to, approve it now, I would propose that that be conditional upon an opinion from the city attorney that there's, no way we can have either the county or the state at least contribute That's a good question. But I mean, I do know we certainly already have some lights there, so presumably, you know, we're obligated to a certain extent. But I think that's critical information to have, so.
Mayor and Commissioners, if I may, you know, one thing, we have some public safety concerns here in our city, and I think we have to accept some responsibility, and my concern is we keep delaying this, especially like the Pier parking lot crosswalk area. Maybe we delay some of the other ones, but I think as this commission and this governing body, we have to make some decisions, especially because this commission brought it to our attention to address these issues, and now we've taken that progressive or proactive approach. And I feel we have to take some responsibility and step forward. My concern is just to delay it some more. And again, if we need to go back to the original number with eliminating some streetlights here in the area, which I think Bill and I and my staff and his staff can do, to get back, if we're trying to get back to the original price we currently pay until we can negotiate again the next, I don't know, contracts with our city attorney. But again, I'm just concerned we put it off again as we get towards we're approaching our summer months again, here in the next 2 or 3 months. That'd be my concern.
If I may.
I would echo that as far
I'm
as
not
the
in any
safety.
way proposing, I mean, I'm in support of this. I'm not worried about $200 a month that we're going to end up recouping, right? Which is what the data before us is saying that specifically. The LED conversion will offset this cost. That's not a concern. I'm not suggesting that we delay it like a month, but it can take one business day for the city attorney to just verify and for you to pull up the document to verify that it is in fact our responsibility. I do understand that historically we pay for the striping in certain areas where we feel it's a safety issue, even when the county doesn't step up. You know, please understand my statement. I'm not proposing a continual delay, but rather that we just have that confirmation before it's acted upon. Yeah, no, because I'm 100% behind your concerns regarding safety as well. So I don't see those interests as conflicting at all.
Mayor, I believe by state law, we're responsible for the streetlights as we are for the traffic signals. We've delegated or turned over to the county traffic signal maintenance because they get a state money that reimburses them for that.
Yes.
But we're obliged to do that, and I would recommend we approve the agreements pending the city attorney's review. Because if my recollection is correct, we're supposed to pay for the streetlights that are within our jurisdiction.
Yeah, my only point is that that when we're at these meetings, that, you know, we not act based upon our best guess, but that we know to the extent, you know, especially, I mean, hey, it's only a couple of dollars, but still, it's somebody else's money. So we've got a duty, that's all, to just confirm it. So, yeah.
Well, I know that we're absolutely responsible for the State Road A1A lights, and they're not going to go in if we don't put them in. The nuances of the county agreement, I would have to look at a little more closely, but my understanding is that we're also responsible for them. So, but absolutely, I can look at it.
I have a question. Did they give any indication of how long it would take to put the lights up once approved? Stop.
Well, yes, not an exact time, but 2 to 3 months, more than likely. So it would be, the longer we wait to give them the go-ahead, of course, the longer that will be. But they have to actually finish the design and order the lights. They're not off the shelf. They have to actually place the order for the lights. So 2 to 3 months is my understanding.
Kind of piggybacking, thank you again for the presentation. You do an excellent job presenting material to us, so I really do appreciate the thoroughness that you put into it. And this might be a question more so for Mr. Law. I know, like the county, for example, when a development comes in, there's requirements for them. They put in schools, they put in sidewalks, they put in things like that. For future things that we do here at the beach, is it uncommon or not appropriate to ask businesses to help with some of this stuff, lighting of sidewalks, putting sidewalks in as they develop property to continue that in the beach?
That's actually a great idea, and that is a common practice. And currently, me and the Public Works Director are having a meeting on Wednesday about the same thing. I do recommend for future, if the City Commission ever feels obligated or grants a conditional use for multiple properties to build single-family residences to one applicant, a condition B, the creation of a sidewalk where one does not exist. I think that's well within the commission's rights, and then they could evaluate the city light. if they need a new pole light and pass that cost to the developer. I think that's exceptionally proactive.
Okay. I know the county does it, so I was thinking here for the beach to implement something like that. Future, obviously, right now, this is a need currently, but, you know, if we get another restaurant or another hotel or any type of commercial business on the boulevard, you know, I'd like for them to have some fair share, just like other developers and stuff do in the county. So that was just kind of a piggyback onto the funding side of it.
Yeah, it's certainly doable. Private businesses can have lights. Seagrove, they manage their own lights. They have their own contract with FPL. So it is done, and we can look into that.
Okay, thank you. Those are the questions I have.
Mr. Tredick, how soon do you anticipate the LED conversion and where we can save money, and the turtle lights that's going to add? Have we researched or applied for any grants with regard to environmental friendly and turtle lights?
We have not applied for any grants for that. We have had coordination with the county. In the past, there have been 28 lights that have been turned off every May 1st through October for the turtles. I'm thinking we can reduce that number. There's several of them that are mid-block. They're not right at the beach. They're midway back, and buildings have gone in some cases to screen it. There are the 3 lights we're talking about at Pope Road. I've met with the county, and we're going to take a very close look at those to see if any of those need to be the amber, or how they can be shielded or put at an appropriate height so that they don't have to be amber, because I'm not sure. And that's another thing about the amber that I wanted to talk about, is I'm a little concerned, because it is a very different look, that we might have a little bit of dissatisfaction with the color of the light. So I wanted to ease into that, try it in a pilot area, not just put 28 of them in and then everyone's unhappy with them. Let's try them in a couple locations. If everyone likes them, we can gradually phase them in, and that's why I want to meet with the chief to find the areas that are of the most serious concern, and deal with those first to try to get those lit with the ambers. And so I don't know which ones exactly we will do yet with amber, which is why we don't have that item to you yet. I'm hoping to bring it to you next month. If I can get information from the county at the very latest, I would think it would be the following month. I'd really like to bring it next month so we can start implementing this by May 1st, though.
So on the one hand, we put in the lights, we pay for them. But on the other hand, you're saying we have to get some sort of approval from the county for turtle lights?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, just so I'm clear and understand that. And then on the turtle lights, rather than have turning off the lights during turtle season does not seem good for our pedestrians. So are we looking at changing all the lights to something we can keep on all the time?
That's the current thought process.
Okay.
And FPL's actually working on another kind of light, which isn't out yet, which can be amber half the year and white the other half the year. It's not approved yet by FWC, so that might be an option down the road, so we don't have to be amber all year in some of those locations. But
Okay. So we have an immediate need here.
yeah,
That would cost us $200 a month, subject to confirming that we have to pay for this if we want to do it, and subject to the city attorney reading the agreements and approving them. But on the other hand, how can we get some movement on the LED conversion and a comprehensive view of the turtle lights? Can we put a fire under our FP&L consultant?
I met with them in the county, Scott Thrappin over at Nathan Otter with the Beach Services just last week.
Oh, okay.
So we are communicating.
You're current.
We're current. We just met. Nathan was going out and going to go to every one of those 28 locations and seeing if we still need an amber light in those locations. If not, we'll take them off the list. If we can shield them versus turning them amber, we'll do that. The goal is to try to keep these things on during the turtle season.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few that are going to be tricky. There's 3 by the fire station, right there by the bocce courts, which those might be a good case for amber in that location, and we don't have to worry about shutting them off. But I'm hoping to come to you in February with this.
Okay.
Just, Mayor and Commissioners, one last concern I have too, that we've addressed in the past, and we really noticed it this past year, was the pier parking lot totally goes black now during turtle season. No, there's no ifs, ands, buts, but from the boulevard all the way to the pier, it goes black. And I have concerns, if we ask the county that they close, do we start closing that park at dark? So it's the public safety concerns and issues. A lot of people down there, as we know, and they congregate now there because it's an easy access to the beach. It's user-friendly for handicap now. And with that being said, with a dark parking lot with over 200 parking spaces there that's open to the public 24 hours a day, we have concerns in law enforcement. And I understand that the turtles are a concern too as well. I'm all about protecting them, but there comes a time where we either ask the county to close that park with gates out front at nighttime during turtle season, like we do our beaches, or I'm just looking for some other alternate, means of us policing our jurisdiction, that area, when they turn the lights off on us because of the turtles. And like I said, I understand the environmental concerns, but we also look out for public safety concerns too as well.
Chief, can we, if the county says we're turning the lights off, can we, since it's not city property, can we put barricades up when it's not lit?
As you know, Beach Services works very well with us. I mean, there hasn't been a concern that they haven't addressed with us. And as you know, they even reimburse us for overtime that we help police that area in our busier months. Again, that's something we could address with the county. We haven't gone that far yet. I was hoping there was some alternative means to just shutting off all the lights and going dark, and which FPNL did say there is some turtle lights per se in the making. But my concern, if you've ever been in the ocean before at nighttime, this entire coast is not turtle friendly. I mean, we may build these hotels and these new houses and they get approved for lighting, but as soon as they're approved and they're built is a different way. And I'm out in the ocean quite a bit, so if you look backwards in this city, this county, this state, the whole state is not turtle friendly, including this jurisdiction. So with that, are we taking, it's just a public safety concern that I have, that something's going to happen in that parking lot of significant magnitude, and it's not going to be good on this city, this county. Just again, I think we need to take a proactive approach this year. We have a great relationship with our county. There's a new director over there who's willing to listen, so I think we take an approach, which I will do it with Bill.
So, yeah, I encourage you to set a definite meeting and bring this up and try to push a little bit, because if we approve these lights and then have to come back and change them out, then we don't need an additional expense to the city on the change. You know what I mean?
That's correct. And once we purchase the turtle lights, there would be a cost for switching back to white LEDs. So another reason I don't want to, because that fixture's bought for that pole, and so they're going to recover the money on that fixture, and then they'll switch it back. So I don't want to put things out there and then we don't want them. I want to take it incrementally and make sure we're happy with the appearance. And especially as we're going down the boulevard, I'm a little cautious about having amber spots than white spots than amber spots, just for the aesthetics of the boulevard and trying to keep a more uniform appearance. So I will have more meetings with both of the people, with the county and with FPL, before the next meeting, and we will have more information to present at that time. So.
Did FPL give any other alternative to the turtle lighting besides the amber light? I mean, I realize that, and I also recognize the safety concern, and I think that it needs to be a priority. So I'm not trying to delay the process or anything, but I also agree with the mayor in that we need to take a smart approach and not waste money by installing, uninstalling, reinstalling. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. But I have seen in other cities it's like a pole. It's about a little taller than waist high. And then at the top, it's like halfway illuminated to like illuminate in one direction. And it seems to be a lot often in coastal communities.
Like a pedestal light, for usually, from what I've seen, those are usually pedestrian pathways, that sort of thing.
Correct.
And that could be used in certain areas. It's not going to eliminate the intersections as well, or the
Correct.
roadways, but in parking lots and things, it could be used. That is an option.
Well, I'm just thinking maybe it would be a good option instead of, a dark parking lot at Pier Park. Maybe we could have some lighting that would be also conducive to not attracting turtles if it was just, pointed away from the ocean. I'm not really sure how all that
No,
works.
that will be part of the conversation with the county
Okay.
on Pier Park.
Thank
And to your other question, there are other options too, besides going amber. Making them lower, shielding them a little better, putting shields on the eastern side of them will help. The challenge is turtles are down at the ground, so they're looking up, and if they see under the shield, they'll see the light and get confused and start heading the wrong way. So if the shielding, it has to be enough shielding to actually serve the purpose. And if it is, then by all means, I'd prefer to do shielding, because FPL will provide shielding without additional cost versus the amber, which is $10 more per fixture.
Right, and I think that we are all definitely on board with the safety and adding the lights, especially on A1A. There are some really significantly dark spots, especially by the bowling alley. But I would like to see, these are our options in black and white kind of format, whether it be the pole or shielding or whatever that is, so that we can make a good decision moving forward. But thank you so much for the information.
The only last thing, and maybe we can negotiate with FP&L if they come out with that approved FWC lighting, that they will put those lights in for us for free, since it wasn't available at the time, because it sounds, based on what I'm hearing now, it sounds like we want to light it up, but we have the turtle side that we have to deal with, so maybe that could be a negotiation that, hey, if you guys get that approved, we'd like to switch to that.
In talking with Scott Trapp with FPL, it could be a year or two before the white/amber is approved.
Got it.
The amber's approved now, so
Right,
we
sure.
could go strictly amber, but we might end up waiting a year or two for them to go through the approvals to actually, and I don't know why it's so complicated, but it's the wavelength
Well,
of light.
maybe
You'd
even
think it
down the
would be
road,
simple.
that's part of the deal, that
It
we're
could.
signing them a contract, maybe that's something we talk to them about, say, hey,
We can absolutely bring that up. I can't make any promises they'll agree to it, but
That's
we
fine.
can absolutely bring it up. And those variable ones are going to be a little more expensive than the amber ones, according to FPL2, where the amber's about $18 a fixture. Well, I didn't have an exact price. The amber white one would be in the low 20s.
All right, anyone?
It's probably public comment.
I have no cards on public comment.
Mr. Bender?
Mr. Bender, would you like?
I pulled it out last time. The last meeting.
From the last meeting.
Oh, I don't have any of those cards.
Well, that's all right, please come up and,
Nick Binder, 232 Big Magnolia Court, St. Augustine Beach. I support everything that the Public Works Director stated. I've been pushing for the lighting on State A1A for like 3 or 4 years. I've watched the winter seasons go. Please drive it some night this time of year, and you'll see how dangerous it is. Also, drive from Pope Road going southbound on it, and try seeing people in the intersection at this time of night. When they're trying to cross, you can't see them. So if you need to have more time on Beach Boulevard for discussion, support and push and do State A1A, half the job's better than none of the job, so I would support all of that. Just as a reminder, with the revised agenda, you were supposed to have commissioner comments and also discussing the Cindy Walker position on it, so it's not on this agenda right now. So I would suggest you put it on for tomorrow night. And if I'm not here all the way through for the Cindy Walker presentation, I'm not sure who's going to cover Beach Blastoff and any issues that may have come from Beach Blastoff. And Cindy Walker did an excellent job during her term. I'm sorry to see her go. But again, support the additional streetlights. If you just can support State A1A, if you have additional questions, or support it all. You don't want to have a death on your hands. And we're in borrowed time. With people riding their bikes, you can't see them. Crossing the intersections, you can't see them. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Bender. We are moving commissioner comments to the end of old business. That's when we're going to discuss some of those items that you mentioned. Oh, okay, well, we didn't do a revised agenda, did we, Max, just for tonight?
Yes, yeah. No, yes, we did a revised agenda.
Okay.
It's in the back there.
It was emailed.
Yes, you have in front of you here the agenda from your book, which is the old agenda. But at your meeting on the 6th, Mayor, you put commissioner comments after item number 9.
Yes, yes.
And under commissioner comments, you're going to discuss.
Right.
Events
Yes.
coordinator and then some other matters.
Yes, that's what I recall. Okay, thank you.
I would not be opposed to moving forward with the additional street lighting on A1A, and I think it should be a priority. And I don't think that it has, I think it can be treated as a separate issue than A1A Beach. And I also agree that intersection at Pope Road is very dangerous. You really cannot see people crossing the street at night.
All right, we've
So
talked
if
about
that's an option.
three conditions on the approval. One is to verify that St. Augustine Beach must pay for the additional lights. And the second is that the city attorney review and approve any of the contracts. And the third, I would add that we would ask for the Public Works Director and the Police Chief to review the recommendations of Florida Power and Light and be judicious on the number of lights on A1A Beach Boulevard and hold off on lights which we think are going to be converted fairly soon. And so I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. Do we need a roll call?
No, but I'd like you to explain the third condition a little bit further for me.
The third condition
What
would...
the expectations of the chief and...
is that based on our discussion, that the, Mr. Tredick and our police chief get together and talk about the lights that have been recommended by Florida Power and Light, and take a second review of that, and where we don't actually need to go forward, where there's adequate lighting, remove those. And also, if it's a light we're going to put in and it's going to be changed right away, we think with the LED conversion or the turtle lights, maybe hold off on those unless Florida Power and Light agrees, no charge.
And would you expect that to come back before the commissioner would just use their judgment?
I
as
think
well?
I'd be willing to give the authority to the police chief and Mr. Tredick to move forward.
Just wanted to-
I mean, that will only affect those on Beach Boulevard anyway. So I agree with, I would have no problem with that.
Okay, let's do a roll call on this one.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor England?
Yes?
Vice Mayor Casca?
Yes.
Commissioner George?
Yes.
Commissioner Rumwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Samora?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
that motion passes 5-0.
All right, the next item is ordinance 2001, first reading. Now, we can't, without the city attorney reading the ordinance, can we move forward on an ordinance?
It would be first reading, you need to read the title.
So, yeah, we just have somebody read
But
that.
he's also part of this.
Presenting it.
Okay.
And I was concerned that on page 7 to 8, that there might be some missing content. I don't know if you want to just continue this to tomorrow until Jim's here.
That's probably wise, that we continue the meeting until tomorrow night. Okay, would someone like to make a motion for continuation?
The attorneys as well as the.
Okay, I'll make a motion to continue the meeting at, for the continuation meeting of the City Commission regular meeting for this month, as well as casting votes on the and continuing the meetings regarding the special meeting to select a city attorney until tomorrow at 6 PM.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
You can leave your books here.
Thank you all.